bold journalism.
But Drew Hernandez is a strong-minded individual.
Exposing lawlessness.
Drew Hernandez, who is ideological.
Finding the truth.
And use the word Antifa.
This is what they do.
Battling
They're
mainstream
liars. The woke mob, all they can do is lie.
These are the front lines.
Welcome to TPUSA Live. I'm Drew Hernandez, host of Frontlines. We got a bit of a change with the TPUSA lineup, obviously, for the live show now that I'm here. As of today, Frontlines will be kicking the live stream off, followed by your favorite TPUSA contributors on the couch for TPUSA Live. We've also got Human Events Daily today with Jack Posobiec, and he's diving into why the CDC is refusing to publish data when it comes to how effective the COVID boosters are for 18 to 29-year-olds. Plus, we got Freedom Papers with Morgan Zegers and Politics with Alex Clark. That's the TPUSA live stream for today, but right now, welcome to the front lines. I just want to say thank you for every single person out there that has been supporting myself, my family, and this show and my career that has brought us to this exact point in time right now here on the front lines. TPUSA and Charlie Kirk decided to hire a crazy person, so here I am to break down the daily news for you every single day, 5 days a week, at the same time here on this show, every single day, combating the fake news media cartel, their lies, their propaganda, and their garbage. We here now. And also, we will be showcasing independent journalists, not only across the nation, but worldwide, that are on the ground, that are capturing the real news, that are capturing the footage that the fake news media cartel tries to tell you doesn't exist. It's absolutely essential right now for such a time as this, because we are dealing in an era of fake news. We are combating censorship and lies. And now more than ever, we need this. I'm not the only one doing this, but I'm thankful to have this platform to continue on what I've been able to accomplish up until this point, and I'm excited to showcase to you guys what it looks like when you expose darkness. But before we begin, all my meat eaters out there, what if you could buy the food you need and donate to TPUSA? Now you can with Good Ranchers. They sell 100% American meat, and they believe so much in what we do that they will donate $50 to TPUSA on your behalf when you purchase from them. Good Ranchers delivers steakhouse quality beef, chicken, and seafood to your door. And with our code TPUSA, you can donate $50 to our mission while getting absolutely delicious food. Good Ranchers isn't like other meat boxes. Over 85% of grass-fed beef is imported from overseas, but Good Ranchers only sources 100% American beef. Their supply chain is honest and transparent every step of the way. That's needed right now. These are real American people trying to help real American businesses, and I think that's a cause that we can all get behind. Head on over to goodranchers.com/TPUSA today to solve your meat problem and donate to us. And ladies and gentlemen, the time has now come. Episode 1 here on the front lines. It only seemed appropriate to take something that happened in my career, something that changed my life, something that was absolutely serious when it came to combating the fake news, when it came to combating the lies, when it came to someone's reputation being destroyed, literally defamed, all the way up to the puppet president of the United States of America. Ladies and gentlemen, we have Kyle Rittenhouse. We're gonna sit down for the first time together on camera. We were together at AmFest, but today, it's gonna be me and him. Stay with us.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
Good Ranchers, straight from the American farm. 100% American meat, 100% of the time. Delivered straight to your door.
Wait, are those my Good Rancher steaks? I'll be taking these.
Claim your 10 free bistro fillets with your next order with promo code TPUSA Live at goodranchers.com.
The media is the most powerful entity on earth. They have the power to make the innocent guilty and to make the guilty innocent. That's power.
That white supremacist 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse,
a 17-year-old vigilante, arguably a domestic terrorist.
Kyle Rittenhouse, a militiaman wannabe.
President Joe Biden, who used a picture of Kyle Rittenhouse as a white supremacist,
is absolutely white supremacy.
You're innocent, but do you feel vindicated?
I feel like justice was served. There's going to be some accountability coming.
White supremacist trials. You've got Rittenhouse.
Hate, disrespect, and intolerance.
Point of fact, the only bigot on the scene appears to have been Joseph Rosenbaum, the child rapist. And yet it's Kyle Rittenhouse who Joe Biden accused of being a white supremacist on the basis of no evidence whatsoever. And let's hope at some point he gets sued for that.
Who will be held accountable?
You are the enemy of the people.
Ladies and gentlemen, I am here, finally, you and I sitting down, going over stuff. Kyle Rittenhouse, I could already hear the girls online, bro, just screaming for you. Dude, first off, how you doing, bro?
I'm doing well, Drew. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. I mean, your announcement last night on Tucker, the Media Accountability Project. So there's two parts to this, right?
Yep, there's two parts.
So what's the first part that you were talking about with Tucker last night?
Well, the first part is holding the media accountable for what they did and making sure nobody else has to experience what I went through. And then the second part is keeping them accountable by providing a hub for like journalists to post content that people can watch on like their phones and have real-time comparisons of what's happening. This is what the mainstream media is saying, and this is what's really happening.
Wow, so that's new. So tell us more about this hub or this website or an app or whatever it ended up looking like. Why is that important to have something where journalists and independent journalists could have a platform where they post what's actually happening in real time in comparison to what fake news is saying?
Well, we're still like working on it. We don't have everything there yet.
Yeah.
It's something for the future. But what I'm envisioning is, because imagine if we had this when my incident happened. 100% of the lies that the mainstream media told could have been debunked, like saying I shot into a crowd of black people, which isn't true. People would be able to look at what happened and then look at like a video right next to it of, oh wow, the mainstream media said this, but this is what happened.
And you know what's interesting about that, Kyle, is when everything was unfolding with you, right? Starting when it actually happened, and we'll get into that later in the episode, right? Because people want to hear like you and I talk about this stuff. But people independently were doing that, especially during the trial. They were making all kinds of montages of video lined up all together in unison of what happened that night with the shooting and all three of them, right? So it's interesting that you're kind of going in that direction where people have independently already been down that direction, but it's like a grassroots thing where people are doing it.
And like this, it's like with like mainstream media, like with CNN, the lies right there, and then the truth from videos like yourself that you filmed.
So your announcement, let's start with phase one, right? So you're gonna start going after people. Who?
Yes.
Name some names, bro. You're going on the offense, okay? What I wanted people to know and see is, because I think what a lot of people have been dealing with is like we're always on the defense, but you're going on the offense now. So you got a hit list of lawsuits?
Well, Whoopi Goldberg, after I was acquitted by a jury of my peers, she called me a murderer. Sank continued to call me a murderer with the Young Turks. Tiffany Cross called me a little murderous white supremacist after I was acquitted. These people are going to be held accountable, and we're going to sue them.
Wow. So have you had any responses from anyone? Because I could only imagine some of these high-profile people that are like, all right, this dude's free. We tried to defame him. We tried to slander him. They literally thought you were going to lose your life. That's why they do it. It's propaganda. They propagate. They put out the lies. It's like the same thing happening in Canada, right? White supremacist, neo-Nazi, domestic terrorist, the list goes on. They defame you in the minds of millions of people, so when they move in on you, it makes sense in the minds of millions of other people that actually believe the lies. So have you had any like responses from Whoopi or anyone like respond to you based off of this new announcement that you're going to start going after people?
Not yet, but these people are going to be held accountable. I don't want to see anybody have to go through what I went through.
Yeah. Well, what about any news outlets? Have you guys looked into anything like that? CNN, MSNBC. I mean, these people, bro, were overtly defaming, slandering you. Have you guys been looking into any news outlets?
We're looking at everybody who defamed me, everybody who's called me a white supremacist, everybody who called me a murderer, people who defamed me and made it hard for me to live a normal life. We're going to hold them accountable.
What about President Biden? That's the main one, bro. I mean, you may not have an answer to that right now, but I mean, last year, or 2020, and kind of out of that after the shooting, he campaigned on images of you in the name of white supremacy. Like, have you guys
lied
had any?
And called me a white supremacist.
Yeah.
Right in his video, he called me a white supremacist. So we're definitely going to be holding him accountable too.
Wow. Well, I'm excited for that because I love to see you go on the offense, especially after what happened to you. And I think everyone wants to know as well, what are your plans for LeBron James?
He'll be getting a letter too.
LeBron James will be getting a letter too.
Anybody who defamed me or lied about me, we're just going to send them a letter and then deal with them in a courtroom.
Well, there it is. Ladies and gentlemen, look at, I was saying this when Kyle showed up earlier, and I'm just like, Kyle had the nerve to come on my show and wear a green shirt. You guys know what the green shirt means.
Well, everybody...
I'm not mad. It's just, yes!
Everybody was judging my suit last night on Tucker Carlson. So I just wanted to say, I like yellow ties, so I'm sorry.
But you have made green shirts very popular, and everybody knows why.
I'd like to think it's olive.
Everybody knows exactly why. Well, let's, speaking of defamation, if we can get this up, I wanted to get your take on this, Kyle. Quintez Brown, a black nationalist, all over his social media accounts, attempts to assassinate a Democrat mayoral candidate with a firearm, okay? And BLM raises funds easily. Guy gets bailed out. No one raises an eyebrow. But you went to go defend your own town because what was happening in 2020. They were destroying Kenosha. I was there, night one. I know exactly what was happening. They defame you, call you a white supremacist. They destroy your reputation when you were actually doing something heroic and defending yourself. When those people attacked you, you were defending yourself. That's proven in a court of law. How do you feel? How do you react when you see stuff like this, dude? I'm genuinely curious.
I don't know much about that case, but to speak that I was defamed like that, and I don't want anybody to be defamed like that. It really hurt me and my family, the lies they spread, and I don't know much about that case, Drew. I try to stay off the Twitterverse.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you about this too. So I was undercover at ASU when they were protesting you after you were free, and let's run that clip. This is what they were saying.
We want to say Kyle Rittenhouse is not just any random killer. He's a white supremacist killer. He is a vigilante. He's a descendant of white Americans who killed black and brown people. And those white supremacists back in the day were also acquitted of all charges if we have read history. Kyle Rittenhouse didn't get a guilty verdict because he was fucking white.
Calling you a white supremacist and you killed black and brown people. But we're going to talk about this right when we come back, guys, so stay with us.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for drive, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, let's continue. Kyle, so that last clip we were playing from ASU, they were protesting you from getting an education, and they're still going on calling you a white supremacist, and you killed black and brown people.
Well, Drew, that just shows you the power of the mainstream media, how they can spread lies like that to where people don't know the facts. And that's why we're going to hold the media accountable And that is why we're also going to keep them held accountable with what I said earlier by creating that hub.
Yes.
So people can see what happened.
Yes, and I'm super excited for that. I mean, that blesses me big time, especially coming from being an independent reporter, you know, and you're not only going to have this new hub to where they could, you know, compare the actual footage to the media and what they're saying so people can make a decision for themselves. Part of your new program is also going to be offering some financial aid to some independent reporters. Can you tell us about that?
So what we want to do also is we want to help independent journalists by like helping with equipment, camera equipment, schooling, gas masks. We all know how bad tear gas sucks, Drew.
Yeah, exactly.
Just helping independent journalism spread so people can get the truth of what happened from honest journalists such as yourself, Elijah, Richie McGinnis, Nathan DeBrune, these honest journalists, instead of these lying corporate media companies.
Now let me ask you the heart behind that. Why did you want to do this, Kyle? Why did you want to help independent journalists? Why does it mean so much to you that you support people like this?
Well, Drew, without you guys, we wouldn't be here today. I'd be in a prison cell. Binger would have got away with his lies. Just like how he tried to smear you on the stand, he would have got away with that if it wasn't for your guys' videos.
Absolutely. What did you think of my interaction with Binger? Like, I'm going to be honest. When I was in the courtroom, I wasn't trying to look at anybody. I didn't want to look at you. I just wanted to tell the truth while I was in there. How did you react to that? I'm truly curious.
Well, Drew, I was like, is this guy really trying to discredit this guy because he's a journalist? I'm like, Binger, you've been telling lies this entire trial, and yet you're going to go and lie and say that Drew is like this far right-wing nut with this
doctoring the footage,
manipulating it. Yeah, I remember that, like how he
Yeah.
tried to paint it as you manipulated the body cam video.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wait, what?
When I literally sent him everything. I sent them everything. So everything that your team had,
they had.
So it was interesting to watch him continue to try and, you know, manipulate. But anyways, you know, I'm thankful for that. And a lot of independent journalists out there that just heard that are going to be super thankful that you're going to be helping them in this way, because it's the mainstream corporate fake news media cartel, that whole entity doesn't want that happening. Because when they get a case like you, Nicholas Sandmann, they want to destroy you.
And they just want to push their own agenda and continue with these lies. And I'm telling you, Drew, they're not going to get away with this anymore.
Absolutely. Now, I wanted to talk to you about BLM, Kyle. Now, let's clarify this, right? We all know that Black Lives Matter is a neo-communist organization, okay? They're self-proclaimed trained Marxists. You go to their website, I mean, they've even tried to take it down by now. They want to dismantle the nuclear family. They want to take down the United States of America, and they're willing to use violent acts to do it. 2020, we know, right? Do you support Black Lives Matter as a neo-communist organization? Do you actually support all of that?
No, I support Black Lives Mattering. I support Black Lives Matter. They do matter. LT's life matters. TC's life matters. Kenny's life matters. Their lives matter. And if anybody disagrees with that, there's a problem.
Gotcha. You don't hate black people, right?
No.
Do I honestly have to ask that? You don't hate brown people.
Apparently.
Kyle, did you actually shoot black and brown people in Kenosha?
That's what the media said.
This is so ridiculous. You know, I also wanted to ask you, Kyle, is, you know, one thing that I did notice when I went to the courtroom was your mom. And she looked miserable. And it made sense as to why. People saw her on TV, and a lot of people were like, oh, it's all optics, just, you know what I mean? It's stupid, right? But when I was actually there, I saw you guys walking through the halls. Your mom, I can't imagine what she was thinking. Number one, how is she doing now, and how has that affected her moving forward?
Well, she's doing good right now. I'm actually going out to see her in a couple days. It was a huge stress reliever on her. She was always there for me, helped me through trial, and helped my sisters, and I just couldn't imagine how difficult it was for her, just seeing me in that situation. I just couldn't imagine.
You know, Kyle, what happened to you was a disgrace. The defamation, all of that took place was an absolute disgrace. to your family, to you, to the United States of America. I mean, it was pure defamation with what took place. I mean, a lot of people, I was getting a lot of questions, and one of the top questions I got that people wanted to hear from you was, do you regret any of this? Do you regret going to Kenosha? Do you regret being there in any way, shape, or form?
I don't regret defending myself, but hindsight being 2020, I wish I would never have had to go through this. Yeah. If I would have known I was going to be attacked and have to defend myself and then have to fight for my life in a courtroom, I wouldn't have gone there.
I agree, because let me clarify this, because there's probably a lot of people watching right now that are just, you know, they hate you and want to see what you have to say. I was in Kenosha night 1, 2 nights before you even showed up. Okay, I was the reporter that was there and broke all of that. I was in Chicago, paid for like a $200 Uber because I saw the shooting happen. Jacob Blake and the rioters were taking bricks to police officers' heads. So I was like, all right, you know what? This could be a riot. I showed up, night 1. They were already burning down buildings, the car source, 1, and they were looting, they were vandalizing, committing arson. They were literally committing physical assault to people. It was not peaceful in any way, shape, or form. So I always say this, yeah, Kenosha was a riot, but it was literally a crime scene. Literally a crime scene. And what you did, a lot of people say that, oh, he's a vigilante, he's this and that, but you've defended yourself. You were defending your community. And the local government wasn't doing anything. I was there. I watched it happen with my own eyes. The police standing down, didn't want to do anything. Everyone knows in 2020 that this was happening. And people try to sit there and say, you know, Kyle did the wrong thing. I disagree, and I always push back and say, no, he did the right thing. Even when he had to defend himself, yeah, that was right too, but what you did showing up was the right thing. Because the powers that be weren't protecting the people as they should have been. And you don't have to comment on that, but I just wanted to tell you that to your face, because there's a lot of people out there that feel the exact same way. Now, what I wanted to ask you as well is the trial. So in the trial, you did mention that you've been having some PTSD.
Yep.
So are you doing better? I'm just giving you some questions. Like, a lot of people want to know this stuff. Like, are you doing better? Like, how's everything going for you?
I'm doing good. I talked to a therapist. I have a lot of good people in my circle that I talk to, a lot of people I trust. But I'm doing much better. Getting acquitted was definitely a giant stress reliever, and talking to people really does help.
And a lot of people don't want to talk about this, but you defended yourself from a literal convicted pedophile. And nobody wants to talk about that. Nobody wants to say that, especially on the far left, because they just want to make it look like you showed up to shoot a bunch of black people. And, like, do you ever think about that? Like, what would have happened if Rosenbaum would have got a hold of me or my gun in that moment? I was like, this is why I wanted to talk about this with you, because I was there, I had the video, I had the footage, they're airing it right here, right now. I'm standing right behind you. This is when he was charging you, literally charging you from behind, and you defended yourself. Do you ever have, like, I don't want to use the word fantasies, or just, do you ever replay this in your mind? Like, what if I didn't defend myself?
Drew, I have dreams a lot about what could have happened. It didn't, but some of the dreams I have are if he would have got my gun. I have no doubt that he would have killed me. He would have killed me right there if he would have got my firearm.
Absolutely. Alrighty, Kyle, is there any last thing you want to say to the world here? You are my first guest on Frontlines, man, so I'm going to leave the last word to you, bro.
Well, if anybody has a chance, please join us in our battle for holding the media accountable. Donate to tmap.org.
Awesome. Well, actually, the team's telling me we got a couple more minutes, so let's stay a couple more minutes with you. And, you know, what was going through your mind right before the verdict was announced?
Just trying to think. Have you ever went on a very long run to where you couldn't walk after? Well, imagine walking into a courtroom and then your legs are like concrete bricks. Like there's concrete on your feet. My legs were heavy, and I was vomiting before I puked before the verdict, and I was just like,
before you went out into the courtroom?
Yeah, I was like, this can go either which way. Like it was scary.
It's such a disgrace, man, because this was all done by lies.
I do have a question for you, Drew, though. What was going through your head when you testified?
I've never done anything like that in my life, bro. never. Especially something so serious. And it just blew my mind that my reporting brought me to something like this. And I knew what the truth was. I knew what happened. I knew that even in the beginning of the night, and I testified this under oath, that you were attempting to de-escalate situations. Car Source 2, I remember that. You remember that, right? You were outside, you were trying to, and you were successful, right? I wasn't scared because I knew what I knew was the truth, and I knew that I had hours of body cam footage to prove everything I was claiming.
And
right?
what he was doing, he was trying to lie to you. He was like, that's not what happened. I'm like, it's on the video.
It's on the video.
And he's like, he's trying to discredit you, saying, well, you work for a far-right news organization.
Yeah,
I'm like, wait, what?
You
It's
manipulated
on
the
video.
footage, right? But I guess for me, I was just wanting to make sure that everything I said was 100% accurate based upon the footage. Because I didn't want anything to go a certain way it shouldn't have gone. And I knew God was with me just as much as God was with you. And I think that's why we saw the outcome that we had. So if I wasn't a born-again Christian and didn't have God, I don't know how that would have gone for me personally. But it was pretty interesting, pretty interesting. So what can we see coming from you coming up soon?
Holding the media accountable for what they did and helping independent journalists such as yourself, Drew.
Awesome. I appreciate it.
Again, thank you so much for having me, Drew.
Kyle, I love you, man. Love the
you
green shirt. You have made green shirts a thing, not only in the United States, but the entire world. People love you, man. We're going to have you back very soon. And ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this first episode of Frontlines. We are going to continue with a break when we come back after this break, so stay with us.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Steigman. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen, this concludes our first episode of Frontlines. I want to thank every single one of you that tuned in tonight. I want to thank Kyle for coming on and clearing the record and clearing some stuff. I know there was a lot of questions that many people wanted to hear from him, many answers that people wanted to hear from. And this show, I'm really stoked to be here. I'm really excited to be here with you. We're going to be here daily, breaking down the daily news, headline news. I'm excited for that. We're going to be collaborating with a lot of on-the-ground independent journalists. And you guys heard it here first from Kyle. He's going to be launching a program for independent journalists to be supported financially, equipment-wise, and many other avenues, which is absolutely necessary for what's happening right now in our culture. I mean, look what's happening in Ottawa, where you have a tyrannical government that's slandering the people, saying that they're domestic terrorists, saying that they're a threat, saying that they're actually these villainous people, and the media rolls with it. But then you have on-the-ground reporters like Rebel News. Post Millennial has people out there as well on the ground in Ottawa, and praise God for them. And their footage tells a completely different story. That the truckers are peaceful. They're not domestic terrorists. They're not a threat to society. But you have midget Prime Minister Trudeau out there trying to continue to hold power, and he's successful. But what's happening is we have on-the-ground reporters, we have independent journalists, we have people on the ground with footage that's telling a completely different story. And that's what's needed right now, especially on the front lines. People that are on the scene, people that are getting the footage, people that are telling the stories. We're going to continue to bring some talent that you may have never seen before, that you may never see on Fox or you may never ever see on the mainstream media. But we're going to show them, we're going to display them, and I'm excited for that. Also breaking down major news headlines every single day. And tomorrow, we are going to start right out the gate with some of these journalists that are on the ground. Viva Frey, a good YouTuber, an attorney, by the way, but he's on the ground trying to show what's happening in his country. And also we have reporters from Rebel News and Post Millennial that will be joining us tomorrow to give us an update on the Freedom Convoy in Canada. See you tomorrow. TPUSA Live starts now.
Drew, hey, congrats on a great first show. We're going to see you in just a second on the couch. Hello, everyone. Once again, welcome to TPUSA Live. Here's what we're covering today. First, Drew Hernandez, like I said, is going to join us on the couch to chat about his first show and answer all of our questions. Next, details on the Canadian crackdown. Then, an honest discussion about how biological men are ruining women's sports. And finally, the long list of our border czar, aka VP Harris's failures, followed by our initial thoughts of Truth Social and one last thing. All right, let's roll. TPUSA Live from HQ starts now.
Authentic, unfiltered, grassroots content and conversation every weekday. Live from Phoenix, Arizona at the Turning Point USA headquarters, this is TPUSA Live.
Once again, welcome back to TPUSA Live. Man, we got a party on the couch. And how about this guy right here, Drew Hernandez?
Yes, indeed.
First show.
Let's
Incredible.
go.
I mean, I think everybody was on the edge of their seats here in the office listening. We're going to get into that, but I'll do some introductions first. MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis, how you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
Alison Furno, we got Jobob, and then obviously the man of the hour, Drew Hernandez.
Let's go.
Tell us about the first show, because obviously Kyle's here to share a lot of stuff he maybe just didn't have time to share on Tucker or any other platform. But this first show, this is what you want people to see. We're on the front lines, we're getting to the bottom of these stories, and we're giving people the opportunity to speak.
Yeah, I know he announced on Tucker yesterday that he's going to start going after people. But the second phase of his announcement happened on our show here on Turning Point literally today. So we want to make news, break news, not just cover the news. So you guys heard it here first. He is going to be supporting independent journalists and reporters, starting an initiative to help them with what they need on the ground, the equipment, grants, financial assistance, and that's needed. I mean, we're dealing with like CNN, we're dealing with these massive media corporations that have billion-dollar budgets. So what Kyle is doing is very honorable. I mean, he could have easily just gone and made millions of dollars off of lawsuits and just ridden off into the sunset and kept it all to himself. But the fact that he wants to continue to help those that literally saved his life. I mean, that came from him. He claimed that a lot of the reporters on the ground that night literally saved his life out of prison forever. And I think that's a testament not only to journalism itself, but independent journalism within itself. Because I mean, I could speak for myself. I was there on my own dime, all by myself. I wasn't working for anybody, and so I'm really that really hit home to hear that he wanted to do that now, because it's needed. It's definitely needed.
And I know it's something we've been talking about on this show quite a bit, is like, when are we going to actually have people held accountable? And that's exactly what he's planning on doing. I know we've talked quite a bit with MAGA Hulk Stephen Davis about people like Joy Reid. Man, it's like not only do they double down, they triple down, and they just throw out these lies. And I think they can do that because they've not been held accountable. I mean, our current administration has not been held accountable. The Clintons are not going to be held accountable for anything. So I feel like it's inspiring to hear someone like Kyle say, like, I'm not going to go into a long, dark, cold night. I'm not going to say, like, I'm glad some of this stuff is over. Like, people need to be held accountable, and there needs to be consequences.
I totally agree. I think this is like the bigger picture is like the grassroots of humanity rising up in the face of tyranny. And the reason why I say that is, I mean, I keep going back to Ottawa. It's happening and happening and happening, where you have these federal governments that want to crack down on human beings and say, we're the ones that'll tell you when you could have freedom, and then they crack down on the media as well, and they try and black out the media because they don't want the rest of the world to see that they are as violent as they really are, that this is actually happening. And you're only going to get that with some, I mean, every now and then you'll get it in the MSM, but, independent reporters are they're a whole different breed, man. I mean, it's a lot of people that are just working on their own dime. It's different. Yeah. It's different when you're just trying to, I don't want to use the word make it, because I never wanted to make it. I still don't think that I've made it. Like, my work is never done.
Yeah, because that's your heart behind that is just sharing the truth.
But it's just like truth. I want this out. We need this out. And I was talking to Charlie about this earlier on his show. Is like, I feel like we're experiencing like this reformation in news and media, where there's a lot of people, because I mean, I don't know about you guys, I could speak for myself. Growing up in like elementary school, junior high, high school, I never had an aspiration to be a journalist or a reporter. Like that was never cool to me. I mean, I loved the Ninja Turtles and thought April was amazing. But like,
Amen to that.
you know, but
let's go.
but I never wanted to become that, you know. But now when you look at the culture, there's like all these Zoomers and millennials that are just like, dude, I want to do that. Like I want to show the truth and speak the truth and be a part of that. So I think we are experiencing some kind of reformation right now in the world of journalism.
And then quickly too, you guys sitting over there, like, what was the experience for you watching Drew talk to Kyle? We'll start with you, Alison.
Yeah, it was really cool, and I think Kyle's story is really an example of the American spirit of turning pain into power, right?
Yep.
Like that whole, you know, we know what freedom feels like, even if sometimes you see people take it for granted, and sharing that truth and being able to have, like you said, those non-biased media sources that can show the proof. I think it really keeps the power in the people, because people know, like, okay, there's somebody out there that's watching that's going to have a non-biased opinion. So I think it was really great. It was an awesome first show.
As we wrap up quickly, about 20 seconds left, what'd you think?
Oh, it was great. It's just, and it's crazy. It's cool to see the office buzz around here. Everybody's like excited, like gathered around over there, like, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh. So it was cool, dude. Congratulations.
Hey, stick around. We got more great stuff at TPUSA HQ. We're going to give you details about the Canadian crackdown with Drew, the rest of the gang. Don't go anywhere.
Good ranchers, straight from the American farm. 100% American meat, 100% of the time. Delivered straight to your door.
Wait, are those my Good Rancher steaks? I'll be taking these.
Claim your 10 free bistro fillets with your next order with promo code TPUSA Live at goodranchers.com.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. I hope you really enjoyed that Good Ranchers commercial. If it was your first time watching it, I'm sure you were like Alison. Alison's like, what's happening here, John? What's up next? Just you wait, all right? Meat's about to get tenderized. Thank you to our good friends over at Good Ranchers. Incredible stuff. MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis, Alison Furno, Jobob, Drew Hernandez, the man of the hour here. I'm John Root. Got to talk about what's going on in Canada, because there's news coming out every single day. You do a good job keeping people up to date about what's going on. Obviously, Jack Posobiec, very thankful for him as well. But they're using emergency powers now. And it's something that has never been done in Canada. We actually got real peaceful protesters out there. What's been your response to what's been happening since those powers have been enacted?
If only nobody called this. Like, isn't this all what we've been talking about when you do
Tell me about
emergency powers? All that is a gateway to do whatever the heck you freaking want. So unfortunately, I'm not super surprised. I don't know, is anybody else shocked by this? No. It's terrible. Don't get me wrong. There's no we're not saying that this is good, but this isn't surprising at all. And it's unfortunate that it's not surprising.
Especially after Prime Minister Trudeau, like literally praised Xi Jinping.
Yeah. Oh, well, you saw that.
Egregious.
He said it. He admired
way
China.
back.
Yeah, he admired China. And then also, I don't know if you saw the video that was circling around when Fidel Castro came to Prime Minister Trudeau's dad's funeral in 2000, and they had an emotional embrace. What's going on there, dude?
Oh, yeah.
Like father, like son?
I have one question. Yeah. You remember in 2016, after the Trump presidency and all the different left-wing artists and celebrities came out, you know what? we're going to up and leave and move to Canada.
Yeah, where'd it go?
Are you still going to go now that property is being seized and your dogs are getting killed?
Was Whoopi one of them?
I think she was.
I think Whoopi
Why is she
was
still
one.
here in the United States of America?
Like if then candidate Trump gets elected, I'm moving to Canada.
I'm moving to Canada.
Okay.
Do you still want to go to Canada now?
I'd say thanks for the memories. See you, Whoopi.
I've been tweeting that. I think I tweeted this the other day, and I was like, Prime Minister Trudeau is everything that the far left said President Trump was going to be.
Isn't that true?
Quite literally. And it is interesting to see, and I have hope in humanity. I have hope that there's Canadians that are on the fence and they see, like on Tucker last night, that trucker that was literally beaten with the video, you know, and I guess the story is the guy was in his truck and he peacefully surrendered right in front of the police and put his hands behind his head like this, and the cops just, you know, they arrested him and then took him to the side somewhere behind police lines and just continued to knee him, and they didn't know that someone was sitting there filming. That's people have to see that and be like, you know what, this is going a little too far, but there are, like, you know, neo-communists in Canada that are like, that's the danger.
Well, we saw some of this in Melbourne, Australia, too, and that's the thing where it's like, we look at a place like America, and I don't see police officers beating up people in anti-mask or anti-vaccine protests at all. Like, but we're seeing that in different places across the world. So it's like, are they brainwashed into thinking this? Are they? Because that's why I think you might have said it. Jack said it. A lot of people have said, like, this is basically Trudeau's stormtroopers out here. It's like, do they actually think this is a good idea? Do you think this is right to take out their frustrations on people that are actually trying to provide them more freedom?
Right. Well, and you know what drives me crazy is people in America are willing to give up their freedoms for comfort. They're like, oh, well, we can get free healthcare there. Well, we can get this, well, we can get that. It's like, but what's the cost that you're having to pay to get all of that, right? When people know, the government knows they have all this power over you. And that's kind of the thing is I think we've gotten lazy in America with our freedoms. And that's why you see people here like, oh, well, we should go there because stuff is going to get handed to us, right? But at what cost? And now we're seeing what that cost is when you disagree with the government, when you don't go along with whatever they tell you to do. Now it's like, oh, is it worth it, right? Is the comfort worth you being able to be forced into these situations?
Right. I find it fascinating. What do you think is going through Prime Minister Trudeau's mind? Because politically speaking, right, the whole world and all of Canada is watching this.
Exactly.
And the whole thing, and I've been talking about this for a while now, is like, the whole thing was based on a stupid premise. Like, the whole trucker convoy was based on a very dumb, outdated, ridiculous, nonsensical, unneeded rule that he very easily could have said, okay, we're just not going to do that. Then everybody would have been happy, everybody would have been fine, and he wouldn't have this to deal with. But he went so far the authoritarian route. How does he think that isn't going to damage him politically in the future? Which, given the fact that I know that that's the only thing that these types of people care about.
You know, I think it's an opportunity right now because all of this COVID stuff, all of the fear that's put around that, they're seeing it as an opportunity, right? Like, if you have somebody afraid, you can manipulate them. So I think with all of these leaders, they're like, this is my time, because there is not going to be another time where I have this much fear and this much control where people will willingly go with it and willingly even attack some other citizens for it. You know what I mean? So
I think, I agree with that, because I really think at this point in time, he is just drunk with power.
Right.
And when you get drunk with power, I mean, think about a drunk person. When they're drunk, they don't really know what they're doing completely. You know, they're just going with the flow because they are drunk. And the same thing when you're drunk with power. You just keep going with it because this is the reign of control I have on my people, so to speak. So I really think politically this is going to damage him when it comes to any type of election that's going to happen. I think people need to pay attention to the type of Gestapo tactics that he is allowing his stormtroopers to have when it comes to his people.
Yeah, I don't know what influence he's under. I don't know if he's drunk or maybe he got some shrooms from Joe Rogan or something, because it seems like he's in a different universe right now. Because, I mean, you're talking about you're seizing gas cans and you're sending police officers on horseback to trample protesters when you've seen countless videos of them interacting with police. Like some of those hugging videos, too, I mean, with police officers and protesters, like that's kind of stuff that gives you hope. And then we see something like they're going to detain your dog. And then if they have that dog for, I know we might have a photo of that too, where it's like they have your dog for about 8 days or so. and then they're able to kill it. Like stuff like this that you're just seeing up here. So attention animal owners at demonstrations. If you're unable to care for your animals as a result of enforcement actions, your animal would be placed into the protective care for 8 days at your cost. After 8 days, they can
Complete fear mongering. I mean,
Yeah.
everybody wants to keep their dog.
Yes.
That's like, you know what I mean? That's the worst thing. Let's just.
Whenever you get to the point where you're killing dogs, you're not on the right side of history. Right. You're not the good guys if you get to the point where you're killing dogs.
Maybe Trudeau and Fauci talked.
They probably did.
Maybe.
Yeah. Well, I think like the bigger picture is globalism is real. People like George Soros are real. People like Klaus Schwab, which actually is on record bragging about having Justin Trudeau in Canada leading. These are known globalists that want totalitarian global control across the entire world. These people are open about this. You could find all these videos of Klaus Schwab praising Justin Trudeau. So I think Trudeau's in a position where he's really trying to prove himself to the global elite across the entire world. Because now he's in a position to actually strong arm the people, because he got put in a position where it's like, okay, you want to be a part of the global elite. Now you got freedom-loving people that are calling for freedom in your country. How are you going to deal with this? And I think he's really in this place where he has to prove himself to these global elites, and he's doing it. I think he's really doing it.
What's the title of Klaus Schwab's new book? Isn't it like The Great Narrative or something? Like something crazy like that?
Yeah, these are all like Great
he's
Reset.
just open about it.
Yeah, they're all Great Reset. They all talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, people thought that was like an Alex Jones conspiracy theory like 5 years ago, but the Great Reset's open. President Biden talks about it. They all are very open about this, and that's exactly who Trudeau is too. And I think that's exactly what's rolling out in Canada, and if we're not careful, it could come here too. I mean, I think it's already here, but we'll see what happens if they try and roll it out.
And then we saw
entirely.
information that they're starting to dox people that donated to the truckers now too. Like they literally have a system where you can see where the names and where these people are from. And then there's actually people out there that think that's a good idea.
Well, I didn't even know the government could do that. Like I didn't even know it was in the structural mechanics of the government system.
Well, that's why they use emergency powers. It's like, no, this is what we have to do.
But even then, like I didn't know that was possible. Like if Drew dunked a basketball on a 12-foot rim,
That would be incredible.
I didn't even know that was possible.
Be better than anything we saw at the dunk contest last week.
Which I cannot do without a trampoline.
Next front lines. Drew dunks on a 12-foot hoop.
But that's what I'm saying. I think it's eye-opening the fact that holy cow, they can do that. I didn't even know they had the mechanics to do it. So that's what's crazy to me.
Yeah,
I mean, obviously doing it is terrible, but I didn't know it was possible.
I think one of the leaders, I forgot her name. Her name is escaping me. One of the protest organizers in Ottawa was arrested on Thursday. Now she's being denied bail because the judge didn't trust that she would be okay on her own and come back to her court date. So she's a political prisoner now.
That's insane.
And then you're even seeing people we'll bring up Joy Reid again. MSNBC. So you saw how they pick and choose. They're like, no, this protest, it's fine. It's not spreading COVID at all.
Right.
But they're still saying that stuff. Like she came out and said,
no, she's not.
It would almost be more direct and open to just go out and chant, let us infect you.
Oh my gosh, Joy.
And they tried, MSNBC came out and said, these Bill M riots, it's not spreading COVID at all. Don't worry, everybody's safe. Also, anybody that's celebrating President Biden, that's not spreading COVID either. But man, these people trying to stand up for their freedoms and the Bill of Rights and the Constitution, that is just spreading COVID like rampant.
People like Joy Reid have it. The problem I have with Joy Reid is she's a smart person. Whether or not you disagree with her is irrelevant, but she's a smart individual, which means she knows what she's doing. She's not just kind of aloof and saying, oh, well, you still could spread COVID there, and duh, I don't actually know. No, she's an intelligent person, which means she's doing it on purpose.
Right.
So how cynical can you be about these people? The answer is none.
COVID is a political weapon, and the mandates and the lockdowns are the gateway to tyranny. And we're seeing that in Ottawa and in Canada. We've seen it in Australia. We've seen little glimpses of it here in the United States with the vax passports. That is exactly what this is. They have politicized COVID to become a political weapon, and you know that they do this because they slander anyone that has any difference of an opinion, or even a real scientist or a doctor comes out with some facts that's not mainstream.
Dr. Malone, no.
That's Fauciism, right?
No.
But they use that as a political weapon to slander, target you, destroy you. This is beyond politics at this point.
Well, just even look at what Prime Minister Trudeau did when he had people from in their like Canadian Parliament try to, on the conservative side, to actually bring up like, hey, these are the wrongs here. This is how we're explaining it to you. And he just look at these people. It's just like the left we see here in the United States. He goes to the extreme. He sees one video or one photo that has a swastika on a flag. It's like, you really want to team up with these people?
Yeah.
And it's just.
I mean, and who's to say that's not a plant?
Who's
right.
Totally the fence. So he could use it. Yeah.
They're waving Confederate flags. And there's like one in the picture.
I think something really important, like the athlete in me thinks about, we should be preparing when we see all this stuff happening in Canada, right? It's like you need to prepare for pressure. You need to prepare for these types of ideas to come here, which they're already coming here. But I think what a lot of people do is they're like, I don't want to think about it, or I don't want to talk about it. And what we should be doing is preparing for these types of pushes to be right here at our front door. And what are we going to do? How are we going to respond, and how are we going to unite together to make sure that this stuff doesn't happen here?
Right.
Because I think if you prepare and you think ahead, like you know what you're going to do, you plan it out, right? So I think we have to not avoid the things that are kind of scary. Like, conservatives, you're like, oh, America's just, going to go downhill. It's like, no, it doesn't have to go downhill. We have to know how to stand our ground. And if we prepare, we are going to stand our ground.
When you think about any type of dictatorship, what's the common thread when it comes to dictatorships?
Blackface.
Definitely that. Definitely that. But the Second Amendment. You think about Canada, they have no Second Amendment.
Right.
They have no way to defend them. We always say that the Second Amendment protects all the others, right? So, and I'm not trying to insinuate anything, but at the end of the day, we understand that we can keep the government at bay because of the Second Amendment, and that's why our amendments are so important and crucial to the freedoms of the United States of America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think too, when we think about a place like America, is an absolute privilege to be here.
Yes.
And there's even just trucker convoys that are happening, trying to go off to D.C. And I think that's something that we have to support here. And we have to, if you have not read the Constitution, if you've not read the Bill of Rights, read that stuff.
Yes,
stop allowing people from these leftist mainstream media outlets tell you exactly what your freedoms are. No, it's written down. And it's what's made this place absolutely incredible. And I think people are forgetting about that. It's the same thing for people they allow them to tell them what morality is, and they're not getting into the Word of God at all. And it's just it's literally right there. There's some personal responsibility. Know your rights.
Yeah.
And as Americans, we should be supporting what's going on up north.
Yeah.
I 100% agree.
Yeah.
100% agree. People are either going to learn through wisdom or experience, and I would rather not, learn not to trust tyrants through experience. That's just saying. I don't know. I'd rather just take your word for it. Communist Cuba and North Korea. I'd rather just take your word for it.
VP Harris on the world stage coming up next. See you in 90 seconds.
What if I told you that this has all happened before? The riots, violence, church burning, attacks on police, destruction of private property.
My name is Sammy Stein. I am a Holocaust survivor.
This is the reality of what happens when you have capitalism that goes to socialism.
El socialismo no funciona. El socialismo no funciona.
TPUSA Live is about to be spicy. Would you expect anything less? It's me, Alex Clark. Of course it's going to be spicy. Tune into The Spillover, my brand new podcast. Think of it like the older sister to politics with a lot more conservative.
What's up, guys? My name is John Root, and every week I'm breaking down the top stories in sports and bringing you conversations you won't hear anywhere else. It's going to be a great time here on Breakaway.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. Drew Hernandez had his very first show on Frontlines today. It was incredible with Kyle Rittenhouse. watch the rest of the show, watch the rest of TPUSA Live, and then go back and watch it. It's fantastic. But we're going to be posting some great stuff about that on our social media channels throughout the day, at TPUSA on Twitter, at Turning Point USA on Instagram, Alison Furno, Jobob, MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis. And you know, the leftist mainstream media lies to you a lot. And then sometimes I lie to you. I don't mean to. I did say we're going to talk about VP Harris on the world stage. We're not talking about that right now. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. We got to talk about transgender in women's sports because biological men are ruining women's sports.
Yes,
the
they
Leah
are.
Thomas situation is sending effects throughout all of women's sports because they just had the Ivy League championships. And who would have thought that a biological man that was on the UPenn men's team for 3 years would jump ship on the women's team and then start dominating. Here's a video from the Ivy League championships for that 500 free.
Thomas heads in for the final turn. It's going to be a race for second place. It might be Penn going 1-2 with Baroker making the turn currently in second place. And over the last half of the pool, nobody will touch Leah Thomas, who will finish at 4:37.32. Leah Thomas, Ivy League champion in the 500 free. Second place to Catherine Baroker, another top.
So sad, bro.
How many of y'all remember the movie Joanna Man? Okay. Now, the whole premise of the movie is that this guy got kicked out of the NBA, so he decides to go into the WNBA. And this guy goes into NBA player, goes into the WNBA and just dominates. Absolutely. Who would have Spoiler alert, you know what I'm saying?
Spoiler
Just
alert.
absolutely. You know what? This is what we're going to do from here on, right? I am now Stephanie. And Stephanie, I'm going to enter a weightlifting competition. And I am just going, now, don't
Do
be a
MMA.
bigot.
I like it.
I could, but I don't want to get hit. You know, so
You wouldn't get hit, trust me.
I'm gonna lift all the weights. I'm gonna break all of the records, and then I'm gonna transition back. And just to prove a point, because this right here. I mean, we laugh and we joke, but this is absolutely egregious. This is tearing down the very fabric of reality to say that a man is a woman is a man. And I can now jump into women's sports and just absolutely obliterate the competition. Are you kidding me right now?
Right.
Yep. The mega She-Hulk has spoken.
Yeah, you and Laurel Hubbard could hang out from New Zealand.
That's true.
That would be great. And you could
He
actually
did it.
win.
I could.
Do you remember that in the Olympics when Laurel
Yep.
Hubbard was doing that? And then
Yep.
there was the actual gold, silver, and bronze medalists up there. And somebody asked about Laurel Hubbard. They're like, it's basically not worth our time.
Next
question.
Yeah, next
That's it.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's obviously men have biological advantages here.
Clearly.
And then now this isn't somebody that, from a young age was saying, I feel like a woman and everything like that. It's like, no, it was on the men's team for 3 years.
Right.
And then there's also another swimmer that broke records as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the Ivy League. You'd think some of the smartest people in the world would be there. But if you go against this, you're denying the science.
Clearly.
I do think the feminism movement kind of ushered this in because for a while we had women saying, "Oh no, I'm just as strong as men. Like, oh, I can bench press just as much as you." And it's like, "Excuse me, like, no, you can't. Like, if we're in a fight, like, you're gonna win, like physically. Sorry, it's just like." You know what I mean? And so women had this push for a while where they were like, oh, well, we can do everything men can do. I'm like, we can do different things than men can do, that's for sure. Right. And it's just as cool, but it's different. And that was like an argument that I had with a bunch of women. I'm like, why is this a fight right now? It's like, what, like, do you, like, you know what I mean? But that ushered in the idea that if women are equal to men in every playing field, including physically, then it ushers in the idea, well, if they feel that way, why can't you let them, right? And so it was like, and it's like, in other facets of life, we'll listen to your emotions lie to you, right? You talk about relationships, it's like, no, that girl wasn't good for you. Like, your emotions are lying to you. They'll be like, yeah, you're right. Talk about it with your gender. Oh, no. How you feel is the truth. But we all know our feelings can be insane sometimes, right? So it's like the fact that people are going along with this just based on how you feel is just, it doesn't even make sense.
Well, it's about fairness.
Yeah.
Right.
That's it. That's all
It's
it
not
comes
even
down
fair.
to. And I know we had a few swimmers on the Breakaway podcast. We had Erica Brown and Gabby DeLoof talking about that. It's like this all comes down to fairness. And if someone actually scientifically can come out and say that there is an equal playing field, we should allow it. But it's just not.
It's not.
Yeah,
There's
it's
no
not-
equal
that's not a
playing
thing.
field.
Can you imagine being one of the announcers on that at that race and having to hold in the jokes? Ballsy performance by Leah Thomas.
Well,
I think I stole that from Twitter, by the way.
How would all the rest of the athletes feel? Like if I worked my butt off as a woman and I'm just sitting there
exactly.
looking at it like, I can't compete with this.
There's
Like
no way.
look at the difference in biceps. Like I'm sorry. Like if anybody, like literally, it doesn't matter how strong I am. This is not going to happen for me unless steroids. All that couldn't. Probably even that it wouldn't work.
Not if you have that attitude.
But right, that's how I feel. But
I always I laugh when I go to. When I go on a flight, because I said it that way because it's like I always have to like be quiet when I do it, But anytime you're on a plane, right? You always see this. You always see like a woman on the plane struggling to get her bag above her shoulders, up, put away. Even the stewardess sometimes can't do it by themselves.
Right.
Some dude needs to come in. Doesn't have to be the buffest dude, but a dude needs to come in, lift it up, do it for her. Boom, put the thing. It's like, oh, thank you so much. Thank you so much. I don't know. I just always laugh when I see that on the plane because it's just like this argument comes up in my mind when I see stuff like that. It's like there are some instances where men are needed physically.
Yeah. Well, I get mad because now I have to sometimes ask, which is fine, but it's like before we didn't have to, and all these women are like, hey, back off, I don't need your help. Okay, so what? Now now it's going to be an issue because I can see guys will look like, oh, should I hold the door open for you? Oh, should I do this? Because they don't want to be be rude, And it's at that point now where I'm like, that's so sad that it's not, there's those roles. I think gender roles for a large extent of it is really good. You know what I mean? Because we know our place of things, and that's, you know what I mean?
Have we at all on this show at any point discussed why that is? Like think about it from like 10,000 years ago.
We can do that right now, Jobob.
Let's do it right now. I'm ready.
It's a good time.
Like tribally, right? Let's say you have 10 women in a tribe and 10 men in a tribe. How many children can a man have? Literally a bajillion.
Well,
right?
Healthline said that we could.
But women can, at like the most, have like 10 kids. Therefore, who's more valuable to the tribe? Women are. Therefore, if there's any risky thing to be done, you can honestly lose 9 of the men in that tribe and still have a flourishing tribe as long as the women are protected. So men throughout history have done more risky things and therefore have built a bigger, more agile, athletic build because of those risky things. And then you get into Darwin and the strongest survive sort of thing.
Right.
So anthropologically, just from like the dawn of time, this is just how people are built. And it's not a bad thing.
No, it's not.
It really,
Exactly.
what it's saying is women are more valuable to society
Yes.
because they can produce only a certain amount of children while men can kind of just do it. We don't care if half the men die because you only need one or two of them.
Thanos can snap and get rid of half the men.
Just not me.
Not saying that. I didn't say that.
Another thing that I always think about too is like a social. I'm not going to say that. I'll say this. I'll say it. No, I don't want to encourage someone to do this. If you were to go to a mall right now, a man. Stephen Davis went to a mall right now and started punching a man in the face.
Speak on it.
Okay. People would be like, "Oh, 2 dudes getting down." But if Stephen MAGA Hulk went to the same mall and started punching a female in the face,
you can't do that.
People would be horrified.
That's what I'm saying.
They would be horrified. And you always see these leftists are like, how dare you? That's a female, bro.
Right.
Don't you put your hands on a female?
I'm like, they're equal.
But I thought they want to be men. I thought they want to be men. Wouldn't you want to be a man? You want to get hit like a man?
Right.
Don't do that. I'm just
Don't do that. In fairness,
This is the craziest mall experience I've ever had.
In fairness, Stephen Davis beating up on a normal man is also super unfair. So
maybe I should have used you.
Yeah, I should have a weaker man.
Right.
But yes, right? Am I right?
You're right.
It's true.
Yeah, I'm picking up what you're putting down, Drew. That would be an incredible experience.
Okay, so do or do not punch women in the face at the mall.
Yeah, don't go do that.
Yeah, okay.
My goodness. We'll wrap up with this. Biological men, get the heck out of women's sports. You're eliminating women from the record books now. It's a shame. Coming up next, we're actually talking about VP Harris. See you in 90 seconds.
everybody. How are you doing? My name is Osiga Kaku. I'm from the great state of North Carolina, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
My name is Preston Para, and we'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Kyle Clare from Bolingbrook, Illinois, and I will see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Mackenzie. I'm from Fayetteville, Arkansas, and we'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, I'm Johnny Richardson. I'm from Prescott, Arizona, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
I'm Rachel. I'm from Dallas, Texas, and you'll see me at freedomsquare.com. I'm Soraya. I'm from Chicago, Illinois, and I will see you at freedomsquare.com.
My name is Michelle DeGroot from Los Angeles, California, and I'll see you at freedomsquare.com.
Hi, my name is Emma Faye Redcan, and I'm from San Antonio, Texas. I will see you at freedomsquare.com.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We got Drew Hernandez, all black everything. I heard it's slimming. You look great
it's
today.
that month.
Black
It's
History
that
Month.
month, yeah.
Oh,
Black History Month.
I forgot.
Yeah.
I can't. It takes me
And
so
here we
long
go.
every show. Happy
The fourth segment, really?
Happy month, Stephen.
Thank you. It's about time.
So happy for
One
you.
more time, you're canceled.
I also identify as
This is my
black.
last show, ladies and gentlemen. It's had a great run. I'm gonna go hang out with Whoopi now. MAGA Hulk, Stephen Davis, Alison Furno, Jobob. What do you got?
What do I got?
Yeah,
I don't know what you're talking about. What do I have?
I thought I cut you off.
Oh, no, I was making a bad joke, so continue with my... It's
No
better
bad
that I
jokes,
don't
Jobob.
make this
You don't
bad
need to
joke.
hear it.
It's okay.
But we do have a little bit of breaking news. I know President Biden spoke to the country today and said that according to the administration, Russia is
He said...
invaded.
Yeah,
He said Russia. So, in other words, Russia has invaded Ukraine. But the crazy part about this whole thing, too, is I know we talk about the aspect of VP Harris.
Yeah.
A lot of us want to know how the heck she got to this point in the first place. Yeah. And you know the right answer. She got chosen just because of being a female and a woman of color.
Yep.
And she is the border czar. And for some reason, she won't go visit our border during a crisis.
Right.
But she kind of does like the Drake meme, like, our border, and then Ukraine border. I'm there.
Yep.
I will hop on the next flight. Thank you very much.
I just don't understand. Like, I would never want to be liked for my skin color or for something physical like that, right? It's like, if you put me in a room, I want to be liked because of my mind and the way that I think and what I can, you know what I mean? What I can help people with. And it's so insulting. But I never liked her. I don't think anyone ever liked her. Like, she was
President
so
Biden
bad.
didn't like her.
So
No.
bad.
She called him a racist.
Did you like her? What-
Well, 0.3% in the polls. Remember, she got out of the presidential race before Iowa.
Right.
So there's that. Nobody, even on her own side, likes her.
Right.
Well, this is what happens when you have a diversity hire, right? And let's call it what it is. She's a diversity hire. President Biden said, you know what, I'm going to pick a woman of color, right? And what did he do? He picked a woman of color. Never mind the qualifications, never mind if you can actually do the daggone job as vice president of the United States of America, never mind all that. And this is just indicative. I want everyone to keep this in mind because this is indicative of what's going to happen with the SCOTUS pick, right? I'm going to make sure to get the first black woman. I don't want... Can we get someone based on their merits as opposed to their skin color, please?
The thing is, this person, whoever he picks, could be a black woman who does have the
Exactly.
merits. But what he's doing is diminishing the value of that pick by saying that it's going to be that. So this person that he picks could be totally qualified. Could be, but everybody's going to question it now because he already said this is what we're going to do.
Exactly.
But that's what takes away from it.
That's it.
Right.
Because it's like,
You're not helping.
I'm all for diversity. Of course, I love to see black people thrive and Hispanics.
Look at this couch right
I
now.
know. This is a
But
diversity
it's
event.
like,
John is the minority.
But it's like, that's like a disservice to the community because, like, if we do want to see like a black person succeed, or we do want to see like a Hispanic from our community succeed, like, we want to see someone that's actually good.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Please.
You know what I mean?
How about
Like,
that for an
don't
idea?
put someone up that just got the job because of the color of their skin and they suck. Now you're making y'all look,
Now
look
look
bad.
bad, you know?
I know. I think her inspirational phrase that she's known for is like, "Excuse me, I'm speaking." I'm like, so you're cutting people off, and that's like your mantra of what you're known for?
That's
like,
it.
how is that? Like,
That's it.
Like, that's
and
it.
we did it, Joe.
Yeah,
we did it, Joe.
We did it, Joe.
Can you imagine being President Zelensky of Ukraine right now and getting the phone call? Don't worry, President. We have Vice President Kamala Harris here to help. He's like, what? Of all of the people that you could have come help negotiate this very serious thing,
Send it back.
No.
Well, and he's a YouTube comedian, so I don't know how much ground that holds. But just thank goodness.
Yeah. But I mean, there's news outlets from both sides that are basically saying her out there has been a disaster. I know Fox News came out and said VP Kamala Harris gripped as a perpetually unprepared diplomat after her presser in Munich. CNN said exasperation and dysfunction inside VP Kamala Harris's frustrating start as vice president, and the list goes on and on and on. But we have a video from her out there. Let's check it out.
Let's see.
Here we go.
We're talking about the potential for war in Europe. I mean, let's really take a moment to understand the significance of what we're talking about. It's been over 70 years. And through those 70 years, as I mentioned yesterday, there has been peace and security. We are talking about the real possibility of war in Europe.
Saying a lot without saying anything at all. Classic.
You know what it is? It's the head bob. Like the I just landed one on you.
I just got you. Realize it?
Like we had no idea that's what you were coming over for. Wow,
Can I read you a quote that Jack Posobiec tweeted yesterday from that same press conference?
Love that.
I'm going to read this verbatim because this is actually what she said in that press conference. Within the context then of the fact that window that is still opening, although it is absolutely narrowing, but within the context of a diplomatic path still being opened.
And there you have it.
There you have it.
And then Putin must be like, oh my God.
I got you on that one, guys.
She's making y'all look bad, bro. I'm telling
She really is. I don't claim that. Okay? I do not claim her at all.
Hey, it's her history month too.
Yeah.
Not anymore. Goodness gracious. It's been revoked.
Happy Black History Month, other than Kamala Harris. Thanks, VP.
Are you going to say, what's the President Joe Biden quote? If you're Vice President Kamala Harris, then you ain't black.
But we got to show you that video again of like inflation is another thing that's affecting Americans all across the country. And this is another example of saying a lot without saying anything at all. Check it out.
But for people that are going into their third year of this pandemic, you're talking about cost of living. Was it wrong to consider inflation transitory? I mean, these price spikes seem like they're going to be with us for a while.
We have to address the fact that we got to deal with the fact that folks are paying for gas, paying for groceries, and need solutions to it. So let's talk about that. Short-term solution includes what we need to do around the supply chain, right? So we went to the ports of Los Angeles, Long Beach, Savannah, Georgia, and said, hey guys, no more 5 days a week, 8 hours a day, 24/7. Let's move the products because people need they need what they need. We're dealing with it in terms of the long term, and that's about what we need to do to pass Build Back Better. It strengthens our economy.
That is someone who has no idea what they're doing.
Thank you.
Has no idea what's going on.
No clue.
Like, if you're dealing with an expert or someone that is at least like politically versed to give you like some BS answer, you could at least get that. That is someone that has no clue what's going on, and it's a disgrace.
That
dude.
is.
That is so sad.
It seems
I don't feel bad for her.
I don't either.
It's just kind of like, dude, really?
Yeah.
Well,
Can you at least lie to us?
Lie better. Lie
something. Better.
What are you doing? The thing is, I think about that, having trained politicians to be able to handle interactions like that, the bottom line, it comes down to, I think she's just lazy. Like, it doesn't take that much work to rehearse a couple different lines, because first things first, you know that question's coming.
Right.
Like, you're not a dumb person. You know the question about inflation is coming because the poll numbers say it. Everybody's going nuts about prices going through the roof, so she knows it's coming. So prepare for it.
Yeah.
Don't just like I'm gonna wing it. It's gonna be fine. If I do my little head bob, make it think I got you. I think it's actually she's just lazy.
Well, we know people are having to buy groceries like
what? Because Long Beach and Newport.
Here's what we're gonna do. So there's ports, and then there's the supply chain thing, and it's what we're gonna have to do.
The Iraq.
She's like, you didn't tell us anything.
Everywhere like such as.
Yeah. You remember when that one French actor, Juicy Smollett.
Oh, Smollett. yes.
Juicy Smollett, and she was asked
He
about,
loves Subway, by the way.
He really does, and nooses that he loves as hanging that around his neck as a necklace, apparently. But she was asked about it, and she was like, this is a constant thing. She is never prepared, like you were saying. She is never prepared for giving any type of answer to a question that she knows is going to come her way. Right. It is unbelievable that you're this unprepared and you're this oblivious to the fact that you're going to be asked these questions. What are you going to get as an answer? Nothing.
I think she's more preparing to defend herself to make sure that she looks good than she's preparing to actually address the American people. Because she's not thinking about the American people. She's thinking about herself and how she looks. She's got to be ready for people to attack her, whether she's doing good or bad. But she's doing so bad that I think she's just like, well, how can I defend myself? How can I make sure that I make you look stupid instead of me? For not even answering the questions. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things. Like she's so passive aggressive. I think she practices it. Like I think it's one of those mirror situations. Like she's literally practicing like how to try to make other people look stupid so she doesn't have to defend her own points because she doesn't have any. So
she clearly
it's just one of those things.
That's time, and that time is every day.
Every single day.
Well, this is why this should be terrifying for everybody, not only just in America but across the world, that someone like VP Harris is sent overseas. Yeah. She has no idea what she's talking about. We're the weakest we've ever been. And there's a crisis after crisis and potentially could get us into a war.
Yeah. That's scary.
Like, what? We didn't have our Olympians backs when we just sent them out to communist China. We haven't held anybody accountable. So I think with situations like this, she can do a little Face the Nation interview, and then there's going to be no sort of accountability after. It's like, well, we can talk about like, oh, that was a silly thing to say. Nothing was really said. But like, where's the real accountability? Where are the real answers? And no one's demanding it.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think we need to challenge the beliefs of people because one of the big things with VP Harris was like, oh, well, now we have somebody to look up to for all of our communities. We have a black woman, right? We have a woman. And my question is always, why do you need somebody that looks like you to look up to them? Because I've never looked at somebody and been like, oh, I want to be like you because you're a white woman. I've never thought about it as a woman or a man even. I mean, if there's a guy that does something really cool, I'm like, I want to be like him. I want to do something like that, right? Because I like the way you think. I like the way you do things. I'm not looking at your exterior, and we need to challenge that narrative of like, why are you teaching your kids like, oh, yay, there's a black man, there's a black woman, so now you can do it. I don't think you need to have that visual because if all humans are really created equal, like everybody says they believe, then stop looking at the outside for the validation that you can do something.
That is beautiful.
I'm just saying.
That's real.
Yep. A tangible question. What do you think she does on the plane? Like that plane ride is like 5-6 hours to Ukraine. Nobody thought to bring up, hey, maybe we should go over what you're going to say.
Talking points.
Like, but really though, what are you doing on the plane? Like, what is going on that is so much more important than the thing that you're going to talk about than preparing for the thing that you need to go talk about.
I wonder, it'd be interesting to interview her assistants and see like what they actually do for her. You know what I mean? Like
the ones that hate her?
Yeah. Known some of them that worked when she was the California State Attorney General.
Really?
And the stories are not great.
Wow, she did an incredible job there too.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Really.
Yeah. We love her.
This is why it's important that we're respected. Like, let's be honest. Nobody is afraid of Vice President Kamala Harris.
Exactly.
There is nobody that on the world stage, Putin is not afraid of her, Zelensky, Kim Jong-un, North Korea, all these dictators. Nobody is afraid of her. Nobody takes her serious. Nobody takes President Biden serious. We are weak. We look weak on the world stage right now, and it's because of people like this that are, whatever your politics are, she represents you.
Yeah.
When she goes abroad diplomatically, she represents you, okay? And the rest of the world sees her and sees a disgrace. And that's what you look like right now because of these people.
Yeah, it's true.
And I think that, we laugh and we joke and we have a good time and everything. like that. But at the end of the day, we got to understand this is our leadership. These are the people that are representing us, as you were saying. These are the people that are representing the United States of America. It would be a lot funnier if this was just like the vice president of Walmart. Right, you know, that would be one thing, but this is the vice president.
Could she even manage that, bro?
I highly doubt it. Okay,
I would still be embarrassed on behalf of Walmart.
Me too.
Why don't we send the Target person up?
It's true. Where you continue, finish.
But that's what we need to keep in mind. That when we're voting for these individuals, and when it comes to these people, we got to understand that these are to be the people that are going to represent the United States of America in our interests, right? Especially when it comes to foreign affairs, we want to put our best foot forward, and we're not doing that, and that's scary because we, like John was saying, we could be entering into a war. This is a problem. Okay, so we got to really keep this in mind going forward. We really
Remember how many wars we got into with President Trump?
90 million, right?
All of them.
Nuclear holocaust.
Oh, wait,
was it zero?
I don't even know how we're
I
here.
think the answer was zero.
Okay,
Yeah,
got it. Oh,
clearly.
yeah, gotcha.
And think about that, like just over a year of this administration, and then potentially there could be war.
Yeah.
It's interesting how Vladimir Putin didn't do anything when his puppet was in
Right.
office.
Right.
Such a controlling arm of Russia.
Did so in President Obama, did so with everyone else in this situation, but not with Trump.
What a time to be alive, huh?
What a time.
Coming up next, we got one last thing. We're talking about Truth Social. We'll see you soon.
You have to ask the question, how is the most heavily funded tribe have the poorest population?
Listen to me. My country is very because everything problem here. Don't have petroleum for bus and Cuban, for car, for life, for nothing.
And it sucks. Socialism sucks. There's no other way you can describe it.
Do you like guns? Do you like ammo? Do you like suppressors? Do you like freedom? Do you love America? Do you like baseball? Do you like rifles? Do you like 9mm? Do you like pistols? Join me, Paige Rue, every week on Reloaded.
Good ranchers, straight from the American farm. 100% American meat, 100% of the time. Delivered straight to your door.
Wait, are those my Good Rancher steaks? I'll be taking these.
Claim your 10 free bistro fillets with your next order with promo code TPUSA Live at goodranchers.com.
This is your brain. This is your brain on socialism. Any questions?
Welcome back to TPUSA Live. We do want to say a special thank you to all our guests that aren't going to be joining us here for one last thing.
Yeah.
But Drew Hernandez, congratulations on a great first show. That was fantastic. I mean, Kyle Rittenhouse as the first guest is absolutely incredible. Jobob, Alison, Furno, thank you. We got MAGA Hulk Stephen Davis
And we got influencer media administrator Lily Stanley. How you doing? She's back.
Well, how are you?
Back for more fun and exciting.
But we got to talk about True Social, because True Social was #1 on the Apple iTunes charts. I know it was trending right behind President's Day on Monday, and luckily I was able to get in. I feel like I knew I knew a few people, and they got me in. But I think it's one of those conversations of not about who, we'll talk about who's waiting on the outside. There's hundreds of thousands of people that tried to get in, and it's everyone got put on a wait list. I know you two were, but being on the inside, I want to see what is this like. Is this different than Twitter? There's certain capabilities that are like it, but what's going to differentiate this place and not make it a conservative echo chamber? And that's what I'm kind of worried about right now. Is that's all I see right now. There's a lot of people that think the same.
That's got to be something that I hope they focused on, because I was trying to get in. I've spent the past 3 days checking my email, and I keep getting an error code, and some of my friends have been kicked back on the waiting list from 10,000 to number 100,000.
Oh my.
So it's booming, which is fantastic for them, and I'm glad that they kind of set up a fail-safe like this to kind of funnel these responses, because I'm sure something that they were probably concerned about were a bunch of bots or people trying to infiltrate the platform, right? So I'm excited to get in there. Hopefully they do have something different to offer than everything else. But at the end of the day, proud of conservatives for building an additional alternative platform to Twitter or Instagram or these other censor chambers, and hopefully we can get some people over there, some big names.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, I really want a platform where we can really get our ideas out. And at the end of the day, that's all we want to do, is we want to get our ideas out to the American, to exist. Can we please do that? But one thing you have to worry about is the fact that if this is going to be another echo chamber, then what impact are we really having on society? Right? And what impact are we really having on other people with different minds and different thought processes who don't think like us? That's why it is important to stay on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram. You have to stay on these platforms because you got to try to convince these people somehow, some way, and get the message out to them to try to get them on the right side of history. And if we don't, then if we're just going to be an echo chamber, then what good are we really doing in the world?
Yeah, because I get there's aspects of people enjoy Twitter, the capabilities of Twitter. Obviously, people want to have free speech. It's the reason these platforms get built up. True Social, you got Getter. There was other platforms like Parler and things like that. But I just hope that what's going to set you apart? What's your live streaming capabilities? How are you going to be able to actually share trending news and everything? So we'll see what happens there. I'm on the inside. I can't wait to see you guys.
Well, you probably won't see me for a while.
We're hating from the outside of the club.
Yes, we are. We're in the line.
But definitely, we wanted to wrap up the show, though, to honor one of our own. So today, the conservative movement mourns the loss of one of our dearest and most beloved members of the TPUSA family. On Friday, February 18th, Zoe Zozo Bethel went home to be with her creator. Zoe was a TPUSA ambassador, political commentator for Right Side Broadcasting Network, a brand ambassador at Liberty University's Falkirk Center, a spokesperson for Students for Life, and worked closely with our friends at Project Veritas. Her achievements in the political world did not come close to the personal impact she had on every single person she met. Zoe conducted herself with the utmost grace, elegance, and wisdom, offering light to every room she entered. Zoe, you're a gift to all of us at Turning Point USA, and you'll be dearly missed. To the Bethel family and friends of Zoe, you're all in our thoughts and prayers. And for those of you that would like to show additional support outside of prayer, you can donate to GiveSendGo at givesendgo.com/Zoe Bethel, which will go directly to Zoe's daughter, Jessavana. But here today, obviously, we have Lily, and I'd love for you to say a few words to talk about how much she meant to not only the TPUSA, but conservative and Christian communities.
I mean, I don't even know where to begin. She was truly the definition of grace and beauty and elegance and wisdom. From the moment I met her, she just took my breath away with her physical beauty, but more than that is her heart for what is good and true. I mean, her testimony with her daughter and her fight for life, getting pregnant at a young age and being able to minister to young women through that has just been incredible. And my biggest takeaway from the short time I knew Zoe is she is a miraculous listener. She listens with the intent of understanding you. And I just want to challenge everybody today to take your interpersonal relationships to another level. Those people you call your best friends, the people you see daily on the weekends, how much do you know about their life and their traumas and their upbringing and what has hurt them. Dig into those relationships and build something beautiful with people and get out of that surface relationship, because we're here as a community to uplift and help and heal each other. And she was that for me and for many people in our movement. So to be like Zoe would be to be a good listener.
And the world is better off because of Zoe. So make sure you support there at givesendgo.com/Zoe Bethel. We'll see you guys tomorrow.
All right, guys, you have signed up, right? You've joined freedomsquare.com. If you haven't, why not? This should have happened a decade ago. How did somebody not think of this earlier? If you're a business owner, we have a business directory to promote your business to patriots across the nation. So if you want to buy American, if you want to sell American, we have a business directory. Whatever it is, go now.
Join us in the fight for freedom. Welcome to Freedom Square.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome aboard today's edition of Human Events Daily, powered by Turning Point USA. Today's top stories, ones that the mainstream media is probably not going to be focusing on. First up, the CDC has refused to publish data on booster effectiveness for 18 to 49-year-olds. We're going to talk about that. Next, the NIH has sent out 292 fully redacted pages in response to a FOIA request related to virus research in the Wuhan lab. Third, conservatives are up 10 points in Canada in a new poll amid Trudeau's trucker crackdown. They're also holding the Freedom Convoy founder and organizer without bail. And then finally, Putin is ordering peacekeeping operations in the Donbass breakaway regions. We got to talk about that. All this and more ahead. Human Events Daily.
Chris, that when people say done with COVID means you want to get back to normality to the extent that you can. But the fact is you'll get back to normality when you have a certain percentage of people who have immunity. Now, that immunity could either be infection, and hopefully people would get boosted after, even though you do get a good degree of protection from prior infection. But if you really want to get the epidemic behind you, put it in the rear view mirror, just saying you're done with COVID, you may be done with COVID, but COVID is not done with the United States, nor is COVID done with the world. We've got to do what it takes to get it to be done.
You may be done with COVID, but COVID isn't done with you. Okay, well, if that's true, then can we at least see a little bit of that little thing? What's that stuff? You know, we used to talk about it. Oh, right, the science. The data, right? We're told that our country isn't run by laws anymore, or the Constitution, or rights as endowed by God, our creator, etc. All that. No. Our country is run by the science now because we've got atheists in charge. Okay, fine. All right, let's go with that. All right, I'm clearly not an atheist. I believe in a little something called the living God. But if we're going to go with science, and if you believe that science is your living God, then can we talk about it? Can we see the data? Please explain to us what's going on. So the CDC, and of course they're releasing all their data on booster effectiveness, right? No, not so much. The CDC is refusing to publish data it has collected on booster effectiveness for 33 million Americans aged 18 to 49 over, it's from Daily Mail, over fears it might show the vaccines as ineffective. FDA expert tells CDC to tell the truth. 2 weeks ago, the CDC published data about the effectiveness of boosters against COVID-19, yet they failed to publish a tranche of their data, however, omitting the impact on those aged 18 to 49 who are least likely to benefit from the boosters. The CDC are also being criticized for failing to publish their information about child hospitalization rates and comorbidities. A spokeswoman for the CDC said they were concerned that the data would be misinterpreted and pointing out that it was incomplete, it was not verified. Critics have said that it's always better to publish the information rather than withhold and allow scientists to analyze and explain what they could. Oh, so you're telling us that we're supposed to believe the science. You believe in science. Science is now your God. When they say they believe in science, They're not following science. They're following what their TV is telling them to do. They're following whatever CNN is telling them to do. You're not actually looking at data. And why is that? Because you have erected your own new secular God. And that is the God of political correctness. That is the God of wokeism. That is the God of equity and equality and whatever word you want to come up with it now. Systemic thisism and thatism. That's what you're trying to push because you don't want to talk about reality. And because you think that it's politically incorrect to talk about people who have comorbidities, to have people that are more at risk from COVID-19 than others. People who are overweight, people who are obese, people who don't get enough sunlight, don't get enough vitamin D, right? You are going to be more at risk. That's just a fact. That's science. That's something that we've all seen that's come out in, the actual data. But of course, you can't have that. And then we've also heard, and the FDA official was on Project Veritas tape saying this, that Pfizer wants to have a recurring fountain of revenue from getting people signed up for these yearly vaccines and yearly boosters, the same way that they push yearly flu shots. Okay, that's one thing if you make it a choice, but it's clearly another thing if it's mandated. If you're required by government to have this. Look, I've said before, boy, that's a great business model. I would love if I could mandate that 33 million Americans had to download Human Events Daily every day and to support all of our sponsors and go to mypillow.com, promo code POSO and Field of Greens and everything else that's out there, all of it, right? But that's not what's going on. We're not mandating that because that's not the kind of country we're supposed to be. We're supposed to be the kind of country that has a little thing called freedom, free choice, free expression, and the ability to control what goes into our bodies, bodily autonomy. And here I thought that the government would agree with that. Foolish of me.
But no, I'm not convinced about that. I think that we should continue to investigate what went on in China until we find out, to the best of our ability, exactly what happened. Certainly, the people who've investigated say it likely was the emergence from an animal reservoir that then infected individuals, but it could have been something else. And we need to find that out. So, that's the reason why I said I'm perfectly in favor of any investigation that looks into the origin of the virus.
Under a serious country, if the United States were a serious country, right, which would be wonderful to have. I wish we had one. Something I learned in the intel community is that we're not a serious country. We don't take world affairs seriously. We don't take ourselves seriously. We come up with these phony and fake kind of reasons to talk ourselves out of acting and thinking like a serious country. So we don't have actual statesmen. We don't have actual diplomats. We don't have actual politicians who are operating in our national self-interest. And so when COVID-19 came out, early January 2020, one of the very first things I said was, you got to see what's going on in that lab. And if China won't let us know what's going on in that lab, the CCP won't let us know what's going on in that lab, you got to get in there. You got to raid it. You got to go in, whether you're using infiltrators or sources, whatever it is, you've got to get the documents and the data out of that lab. But we didn't even know in those early days that it wasn't just the CCP that was operating in the Wuhan lab, that the NIH, through this cutout organization called EcoHealth Alliance, was also funding and participating in experiments, gain-of-function experiments. And yes, they were gain-of-function experiments. Sorry, Dr. Fauci, I know he's trying to claim they're not, but they didn't fit the framework and the reservoir. No. They were gain-of-function experiments that were going on in Wuhan. You were doing them there because you knew it was banned in the United States, all right? And then, after the CCP got our proprietary research and technology, the same way they use IP theft in every single industry that operates within the borders of the PRC, they then started conducting their own that we didn't even have visibility on. Okay, well, can you at least give us the documents to show that what we were working on to the American people? Can you at least afford the American people that kind of clarity and transparency to know what their tax dollars and their government was up to in Wuhan working with the CCP? I keep saying this is elite merger. This is not a capture. This is not some, foreign espionage situation. They're working together. They're working hand in glove. They know exactly what they're doing. Trudeau talked about this. I admire China's basic dictatorship. Those are Trudeau's words. I'm not putting words in his mouth. That's what he said. And you see what he's doing in Ottawa. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So let's go with this. The NIH responded to a FOIA request by The Intercept with 292 fully redacted pages related to virus research in Wuhan. The NIH continues to withhold critical documents that could shed light on the origin of the coronavirus pandemic. With the death toll from COVID-19 approaching 6 million worldwide, the need to understand the origins of the pandemic is both pressing and grave. This is from The Intercept. But the NIH continues to withhold these critical documents. So they turn over some 300 documents, but 292 of those are redacted. So we can't even find out from our own government what's going on, what went on in Wuhan, what we knew was going on in Wuhan, versus let alone having any visibility into what China was doing. Again, we're not a serious country. Other countries play to win. We just play. We play these games. We play games with our people. And I got to tell you, from somebody who's spent time on the other side of the desk, from someone who's been behind the screen in the intelligence community, working for the US government, there's nobody behind the scenes that's saying, yes, and then we're going to conduct the experiments here. And nobody's pulling the strings. Nobody's actually making these rational decisions. There's no rational decision maker at the top. And this is where, some people get it wrong. They say, this is all part of some global plan, and they've got this all worked out. And yes, there are goals, right? There certainly is Davos, there is a World Economic Forum, but they're feckless. They have no idea what they're doing. China doesn't operate that way, by the way. I'm talking about us. I'm talking about the Western system. China doesn't operate like this. The CCP, they have plans. They have goals. Xi Jinping, that's a guy who plans. Absolutely. He knows exactly what he's doing, and he is taking steps to put his country's national interest first at the detriment of other countries. Why? Because that's his job. He's the leader of China. But our president and our diplomats and our congressmen and our government employees, our civil servants, they don't act like that. They believe in a different kind, and I can describe this, right? They believe in an idea of what they consider America to be this network of neoliberal alliances and neoliberal organizations. And then they view America's standing as our ability to influence those organizations, or our ability to, use words, right? There's a word cell meme out there. People say they're just using word thinking all the time. They can't actually think through the rational steps. Well, the rational steps on this are clear. Do not work with the CCP on gain-of-function experiments. And if you do, you have to go in and hold them to account. We need reparations and compensatory damages for what the CCP did in Wuhan. Support yourselves. Support the workers. Support the truckers. Support American workers. How do you do this? It seems like everything's going crazy. What can you do? How do you contribute to the fight? How do you help? Look, you got to think smaller. In times of crisis, you can't think big. You have to think small. Sometimes you have to focus on what's directly in front of you, right? To be able to affect those larger things down the line. And that's why I say go to mypillow.com, use promo code POSO or mypillow.com/POSO. You go there, you get in the fight. You support yourselves. You support the workers, you support patriots, you support Americans, and you get great products out of it. Same way, you got the pillows, you got the towels, you got the whole towel set that's out there, the sheets, you luxuriate in the beautiful, beautiful sheets. You get the Bible pillows for the kids. My kids love the pillows. And if you want to use these as a way to donate, we will buy some sometimes and then donate them to the church. We'll donate to the needy. It's just something that we do. It's something that the Poso household has made part of our annual giving. So, find a way to support yourself, support your community. Go to mypillow.com/POSO. The truckers and the crackdown that's continued under Canada on them. Understand what's happening here. This is like when a bad parent is screaming at their kid for not eating their vegetables or not doing what they're told. And instead of trying to work with them and trying to de-escalate and trying to get them through a situation, they've now started getting violent and they've now started hitting the child. That's what you see going on in Canada. That's the way the government's treating the citizens. You're not being treated like citizens. You're being treated like subjects up there. So Tamara Lich, who was the founder, the organizer of the original Freedom Convoy, just came out that she's going to be held without bail. They're not even letting her out, and they're threatening her with up to 10 years in prison. So if you've got one of these woke, bail reform justices or bail reform DAs, here in the US at least, I don't know how it goes in China, Canada. Oh, excuse me, slip of the tongue, Freudian slip, oops, China-da. You get let out. Like, look at the guy in Louisville. Shoots up a Jewish mayoral candidate in his office, fully in view of witnesses. Gets let out 3 days later. BLM Louisville paid his bail. He's out. He's on the street again. But up in Canada, you will be held without bail for standing up for your rights. Now, the one silver lining in all of this is that we're now seeing a new poll up in Canada. And this poll is by Main Street Research. So they're, very centrist organization. Out of the post-millennials reporting this, the Conservative Party in Canada has now seen a 10-point swing. And this comes as Candice Bergen, the new Conservative Party leader, is advocating for the protesters and opposing the government's use, Trudeau's use, of the Emergencies Act, which was invoked to give police new powers to remove those demonstrators. This is what Tamara Lich and others were taken down under. They're now saying under this poll that the Conservatives are actually up 9 points ahead of the Liberals. That being said, just a few nights ago in Canada, that Emergency Powers Act was voted on and it was upheld. So you're seeing a now proxy war for the soul of Canada, the soul of the North. Which side will prevail? Will it be the side of the people, or will it be the side of the neoliberal regime headed by the party of Davos that Justin Trudeau is a willing and following acolyte and disciple of? Will they follow the will of the people? Will they do the right thing for actual workers, actually essential workers? This is not nurses dancing on TikTok. All right. These are the truckers. These are the people that kept everything running day to day when they were mistreated, when they faced harsh hours, when they faced hardships and shortages, long hours. These are people who put their bodies through that kind of punishment and their time away from their families, away from their loved ones, and they do it every day and they do it without complaint. They asked to have their concerns listened to, and they were thrown in jail.
Folks, you hear the news. Once again, Putin and the Russians are trying to engage in our elections and decide who the president's going to be. And this time I'm the object of their attention. Because Putin knows if I am president of the United States, his days of tyranny and trying to intimidate the United States and those in Eastern Europe are over. I'm going to stand up to him. He's a bully, just like the president. And I know he doesn't want me to be president, but to tell you what, when I'm president, things are going to change. Mr. Putin, the American people decide their elections, not you.
Well, we've talked before on this program about the importance of pipeline politics. And now, as always, you can see how important that is. So Germany, just this morning, has declared that they're going to be suspending Nord Stream 2, the pipeline that connects Russia and Russian liquid natural gas to Germany. That was going to be supplying that gas to Germany. That was going to be their new supplier. All of this, when you look at the situation in Donbass, the sanctions, natural gas, energy issues, the importance of geography, that's why we do map breaks here all the time, to explain to people, because geography is destiny, right? Your geography makes you who you are. When you look at the United States, we're essentially a sea power, because if we want to project power outwards, we need to do so with our Navy. We need to have commerce through the seas. The United States is essentially, right, a strong sea power when you look in terms of world affairs. But when it comes to places like China, like Russia, like India, they are essentially land powers. Do they have navies? Yes, of course, obviously. But where does the bulk of their power come from? land and their interconnectivity to that Eurasian heartland. This is the Mackinder heartland theory, so understand that. And the bottom line is this. Fukuyama was wrong. He was completely wrong about everything. You cannot have the end of history just because one conflict goes your way. It doesn't work. You can't erect these massive neoliberal global organizations and say everyone's going to come into this and we're going to abide by these norms and these rules and then just act as if all of that history doesn't matter. It doesn't work. It just doesn't work. Countries operate in their national interest. Period. Full stop. No matter what the United Nations, where are they on this? Nowhere to be found. None whatsoever. The World Trade Organization, forget about them. Just forget about all of that stuff, right? You've got to go back to direct diplomacy. You've got to go back to a situation where America is strong. So gas prices are going to go up now. They absolutely are. Why? Because brinkmanship has gone wrong. President Biden's bluff is being called right now. It's being called. And your gas prices are going to go up because of this. Now, we could be building pipelines right here in the United States. We could be, and I've said, how many times have I said this? Invade Alaska. We have all the natural resources we need right there, or the Permian Basin in Texas, or the Marcellus Shale in the Midwest, Pennsylvania, Midwest, New York, etc. Use our own resources. Bring down the price of gas, bring down the price of oil, and prevent all of these conflicts from going on. Renegotiate the deals if we have to. But you go to a world where you can have that kind of stability and that kind of parity. You don't get there by exploiting other countries through these false neoliberal agendas. It's never going to happen. It's not going to work. But through multipolarity and through serious diplomacy and statesmanship, you might actually be able to achieve it. See if that actually happens. There are decades when nothing happens, and weeks when decades happen. Ladies and gentlemen, now more than ever, you've got to be locked in here. Human Events Daily. Remember our promise, our oath, our solemn vow to you to be good, be brief, be gone every single day. That is what we do. You're getting this news, facts, and analysis faster, quicker than anyone else, more swiftly, and it's going to be more high value for you and for your time. Remember our homework to you. Share this out with one of your normie friends and leave us your 5-star review. Because as we know, history never ends. Fukuyama, just wrong. But before we go, it's time for today's history break. Today, all the way back in 1972, it's not today, of course, 2/22/22, but in 2/22/72, 50 years to the day, Richard Nixon, President Nixon, met with Zhou Enlai and began the process of opening up to China, bringing us to where we are today. Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you have my permission to lay.
How much does the earth cost? I'm gonna buy the entire earth.
All right, welcome back, you guys, to another episode of Freedom Papers. Oh my goodness, I'm not alone. I'm lonesome no longer. We have Connor Clegg back.
Hi, everybody.
I'm so excited. Thanks for coming.
I'm here to save you from your loneliness.
I know. Oh my gosh. Yesterday, the last episode, we filmed it yesterday, but it'll technically have been aired last week once this episode plays. Very nerdy, intense, and my brain literally hurt after. That's one of the ones where I was like, I wish Connor was here to just lighten the load of how much work my brain has to do for this episode. But you guys, welcome back. I hope you subscribe Apple and Spotify. It's where we have the audio version of the podcast. Give us a 5-star review and say this is the best podcast you ever did here in your whole life.
Morgan, will you be pulling your podcast off of Spotify to protest Joe Rogan?
No, because actually, let's talk about that. Sure. My little take, I saw Alex Clark on Politics. She was like super disappointed in Spotify and Joe Rogan. They thought it was weak. What I took out of it is he was like, okay, you're saying you want me to have people on the other side come on my show or like give them a voice? Sure, because remember Dr. Sanjay Gupta when he went on Joe Rogan? It was so many viral clips that helped our side because when we have to sit someone down on the other side putting their craziness out and they have to be held accountable in a long-term format of a video, oh my gosh. I think Joe Rogan was like, I think we're going to, hear out the other people. You're right. We should have people from the other side on. And then this is even better. Some people were like, it's so weak for Joe Rogan to put that statement in the beginning of his episodes. I think he also had a little coyness to his attitude when he was saying that. He was like, I'm totally fine with a message going before the show saying that what the mainstream media is saying is against an opposite of what the people on my show are saying. Yeah. Sure, make it clear that the establishment is saying one thing and then we're having experts on who say the other. You see what I mean?
No, it's really smart. Everything he does is very intentional. I love it.
That's why it was like it was not a sign of weakness at all. And I love Alex. I'm not saying that she's wrong, but some people, I think if you look into his true intentions, he's like, sure, I'm fine with having them explain themselves and their behavior to the American people on my show where tens of millions of people watch.
Literally more than any other cable news show. Yeah, come on.
So that's why I'm like, cool. I want more videos of like the Dr. Sanjay Guptas and the stuff of the world. Like Dr. Fauci on Joe Rogan's podcast.
Always
I would
too scared.
love
Too
it.
much of a coward.
Well, that's the thing. They're not going to go on.
Right.
They're not going to. It's been too embarrassing for everybody else that went on. So, hey, I'm excited to see the first person they bring on. But Connor, we're talking about 17 today.
Yes.
Welcome.
I was 17 once.
I also, Edge of 17. When I was in high school, I know we have a lot of like students that listen and stuff mostly. When I was in high school, I would pick a song for each year. So like Edge of 17 was when I was 17.
Right.
18, the one that's like, I'm 18 and I don't know what I want. That one about being like rebellious. Think of me listening to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we just got done listening to the Temptations before this, right?
Well, the good news is there's a Charlie Daniels song that's, was it 25 or 26? Have you heard that one?
No.
I just turned 25, so I'm feeling like an old fart at this point. But when I see those TikTokers out there in the world, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so old. But Charlie Daniels has a song that's like, blah, 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 at 25, or was it 26? And it's about being like crazy in 26, 25. And I'm like, that's kind of me, right?
Yeah.
I'm kind of crazy.
We'll go
and
with that.
fun and rebellious.
Something like that, right?
Oh my gosh. Look
Anyway.
at my book is just already falling apart. Welcome to Freedom Papers. But today we're gonna do Federalist Paper number 17, and oh my gosh, you guys, it's not one of my favorite papers because I think it's one of the worst takes by Hamilton in existence. There's a few bad ones, but it's one of my favorite papers to talk about. That's why I'm excited, Connor. Would you agree?
I would totally agree, and we were talking about this before the show. It's one of those rare times where Hamilton shows a level of kind of optimistic naivete that we don't see in many of his other papers, right? Because we always start out the show thinking, wow, they are just so wise. They're looking forward so much, and they know exactly what they're talking about. I mean, they really hit the nail on the head. Well, this one, I think that he was way too naive, and he was really trying to cede a lot of ground to the anti-federalists and like give them a little bit too much rope, and he totally lost the plot. Like he kind of jumped the shark here. So I'm excited to get into that. But
yeah,
I
was
it was confusing.
Surprised. Like I was rereading the sentences. I was stopping and trying to reflect on what is he trying to say something that I'm not getting here. Like I was Googling more than ever.
Yeah.
I was like, maybe I'm just not getting it, I guess. But no, his takes are really off base here. And this is the point. A lot of people, when they talk about Freedom Papers, the show, they're like, are you anti-federalist or federalist? And I say, I go back and forth with different takes, but at the end, this was both sides coming together to collaborate because we wouldn't have the Bill of Rights without the anti-federalists. But it's so interesting because on something like this, I'm like, yeah, the Federalists were really, really bad.
Yeah. He had a very conciliatory tone, I think.
Yeah. And so, like we've said with the last episode and with Paper 15, these are a continuation of what started in 15, talking about the Articles of Confederation. Let me try and find that title. 15 was titled The Insufficiency of the Present Confederation to Preserve the Union. It's by Hamilton. The Paper 16 was the same subject continued by Hamilton. And now, again, number 17, same subject continued by Hamilton. We're not going to read until we get to a little bit into the paper. I have a quote, and then we're just going to start going off, and this is going to be a strange episode because I'm like already kind of pissy about it.
Great.
So Publius says, I confess I am at a loss to discover what temptation the persons entrusted with the administration of the general government could ever feel to divest the states of the authorities of that description. The regulation of the mere domestic police of a state appears to me to hold out slender allurements to ambition. Commerce, finance, negotiation, and war seem to comprehend all the objects which have charms for minds governed by that passion. The administration of private justice between the citizens of the same state, the supervision of agriculture, and of other concerns of a similar nature, and all those things, in short, which are proper to be provided for by local legislation, can never be desirable cares of a general jurisdiction. It is therefore improbable, Connor, that there should exist a disposition in the federal councils to usurp the powers with which they are connected, because the attempt to exercise those powers would be as troublesome as it would be nugatory. Is that how you pronounce it?
Yeah.
Nugatory. I've never seen that before. And the possession of them for that reason would contribute nothing to the dignity, the importance, or to the splendor of the national government. Let's just stop there. What the heck are they saying, Connor?
They were basically saying, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I tend to be, they're basically saying that of course the federal government would never want to encroach on the rights that are guaranteed to the states, right? We only have four things that we want to do: commerce, finance, negotiation, and war. That's it, right? That didn't turn out to be true. I literally wrote in the margins of the book here, I was like, LOL, that's funny. I mean, living through what we're living through right now and looking at that, I'm like, what are you talking about? You're silly, Hamilton. But no, I mean, this is such a, he's so off track here. And he really wanted these people to believe that, like, we wouldn't touch it. Like, here, just join the union. We won't mess with you. We only want these four things we promise. Pinky promise, right?
Uh-huh.
And I don't know that he was, like, being backhanded. I think he was serious, right?
I think that's the point of me, like, doing so much research on this paper. I was like, maybe he's being coy and I'm not getting his tone correct, or maybe he's not trying to actually make the point I think he's making. He's really saying, oh, don't worry at all. There's no interest that the federal government would ever have. There's, like, no passion for man in federal government to say, oh, yes, it will suit us to take over these powers that should be handled by local jurisdictions or states.
Right.
We don't want them. It doesn't serve us at all. There's no incentive for the federal government to take over control of these things. And I'm sorry, but how wrong was he?
No, he's incredibly wrong.
Now we have the FBI going after, school board concerned parents.
Right.
And we have just an endless slew of things. We have a Department of Education at the federal level to begin with.
Yeah.
We have a federal income tax. All these random things where it's just like, what?
How did we get here?
And we have Hamilton, Alexander Hamilton of all people, saying, well, that's not even a problem to worry about because those are things that just make sense that they should be handled by the local and state governments of the world.
He said just the attempt to exercise those powers, like you're talking about education, taxation, et cetera, it would be as troublesome as it would be nugatory, which means of no value or importance. Worthless is a synonym for it.
Thank you for Googling that.
Yeah, of course. I did earlier, but I couldn't remember. And then I thought this was hilarious. To do so would contribute nothing to the dignity, to the importance, or to the splendor of the national government.
What
I mean,
was he thinking?
I think that, and this is a common theme that we have in all of Hamilton's writings, he's very romantic about the idea of the national government, right? And so just like with a romantic partner, you want to sometimes hope for the best, even if you ignore the worst. And maybe that's what he's doing here, right? He's saying, no, I mean, that's like way below them. They would never do that. They would never cheat on me. They would never, go sell crack behind my back or whatever. I don't know. I've never dealt with that.
You never know. People just lie.
You never know. They do lie. That's exactly right. But I don't know, man.
But that's why we have separation of power, checks on
right.
power, and it's crazy for Hamilton to be so naive.
I completely agree. But I mean, at the end of the day, he was, and they bought in. And it's actually really interesting. So I don't know if we can just dive into it. Can we dive into it? Okay, I'm going to dive into it. So
I think this is going to be a free-flowing episode because it's so chaotic.
I think so too. So this obviously went through and we ratified the Constitution, right, as it was written. And then whenever they were laying out the Constitution, they said that we're going to make Article 1 the powers that are delegated to the legislature, right? So then you get to Article 1, Section 8. And even though Hamilton says there's only these four things that we want to deal with, commerce, finance, negotiation, and war, you go to Article 1, Section 8, and I'm here in the same copy of Freedom Papers that Morgan uses. It's a beautiful book. Morgan got it for me last week. It was incredible. And it goes on for 1, 2, 3 full pages that are explaining all the powers of Congress. And it goes way beyond commerce, finance, negotiation, and war. And it ends with like this real slap in the face. Have you ever read Article 1, Section 8, the last section of it, 179 through, what is this? Whatever. It says,
it out loud for
to
everybody.
make all laws which shall be necessary and proper for carrying into execution the foregoing powers and all other powers vested by this Constitution in the government of the United States or in any department or officer thereof. That's incredibly vague. What the hell is necessary and proper? Who decides what is necessary and proper?
Mm-hmm.
And how does that, jive with, well, we only want 4 things: commerce, finance, negotiation, and war? It doesn't.
Yeah. And then you're right, it's a slap in the face to then try and justify to the people, well, there's no dignity in us trying to gain power in anything else anyways. Don't worry. It seems like you're like gaslighting mental abuse in a relationship where they're like, I was talking to some girls about it, of like when a guy will like another girl's Instagram picture, and Instagram's a little, flashy these days. Right. People post some strange things. Not necessarily people like me because I'm a grandma.
That's right.
But people will post some weird things, and then guys will like it and then say, well, why are you even worried? They're my friend. Or I'm just helping them and supporting them. Or I've made content with them before, and you shouldn't be jealous. I love you, all these things. Yeah. It just feels like that's how he's speaking to the readers.
Exactly.
Like, why are you even worried? It's not going to benefit the people, the politicians anyways, to try and take that power over you, when that's exactly what happened.
Right.
So that's why I was so thrown off by his tone, because I usually am like, oh, they're such great writers, and this time I'm like, what were they, like, angry when they wrote
dumb,
this?
yeah,
Or like, did they just have a little too much to drink that night?
You can tell when Hamilton's being coy. Like some of his other papers, it was a few back. It might have been 14, or I don't really remember. So there's no point in guessing. But you could tell that he was being like kind of fun with it. Like he had exclamation points and he had like all these like italicized things, and it was like he had a little bit of an attitude about him, but he was right. He was empowered by his confidence because he was in the right here. This one, it's just like straightforward. It's just like, yeah, like I'm being dead serious. We only want 4 things, I promise. And it's just really, really odd. And then in the time that we're living in today, obviously, like you said, we know that that's not true. I mean,
and that's what I want to talk about.
Even something as simple as like the idea that we could have a mask, mandate or a vaccine mandate or anything like that on every citizen in the United States, which is in effect what's being done, right? Mm-hmm. That flies so in the face of what we should be allowing our federal government to do. And then they're suing states who try to oppose them, or they're like sitting in the feds to, crack down on these states that are opposing national policy. Like how did we get here? Well, we got here because we let the federal government become way too powerful and way too expansive. And ultimately it's going to lead to the end of, something that I call the Pax Americana, just like the Pax Romana, a peaceful America. We don't have that anymore, right? Because at the end of it, there's been so much tension created between state and local authority and the federal government that it's impossible to live a peaceful life without having to worry about the feds knocking down your door or calling you a domestic terrorist or surveilling you under the Patriot Act or something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's bad news, folks.
Yeah, actually, and we'll get into that. Let's read the next section because I had some thoughts. He goes on to say, but let it be admitted, for argument's sake, that mere wantonness and lust of domination would be sufficient to beget that disposition. Still, it may be safely affirmed that the sense of the constituent body of the national representatives, or in other words, the people of several states, would control the indulgence of so extravagant an appetite. It will always be far more easy for the state governments to encroach upon the national authorities than for the national government to encroach upon the state authorities. What in God's name is he saying? Because it's the only thing saving us right now is the conservative governors in states that are protecting us from federal tyranny. Exactly. Like Ron DeSantis out there. He's the only thing protecting the people of Florida from being oppressed by the federal government. And if you don't live in a state with a governor that will protect you, you're doomed.
Yeah, you're totally doomed.
You're doomed to Fauciism.
Yeah, and that's like literally, I wrote in my column again, it said, let it be admitted for argument's sake, as if this is something that would never happen, that mere wantonness and lust of domination would be sufficient to beget that disposition. Mere wantonness and lust of domination, I think, is Anthony Fauci's middle name. He can't fit it on a name tag, so it just says Anthony M. Fauci for mere. But yeah, tell me that doesn't describe like every left-leaning president that we've had in I don't know how many years, right? Tell me that doesn't describe the deep state bureaucrats like Fauci. Tell me that doesn't describe, J. Edgar Hoover or any of the the spy chiefs and stuff. because that's exactly what motivates them.
Well, Connor, that's what I'm so frustrated by is it's like they just forgot all the principles they've been teaching us in all the other papers, because for so long we've been talking about how mankind, humankind, or human nature and mankind, it's just natural in our natural senses as animals that we will seek power. And when we have power, we will probably be corrupted. And so the whole point of making the Constitution was to provide these checks, to create a system that stopped people from being incentivized to oppress each other. And then we just completely disregard that now, saying, well, there's no desire. I mean, like, maybe if somebody, I guess, was feeling selfish, they could do it. But it would definitely happen more likely from the states oppressing the federal government and stopping the federal government. What?
And that's another instance in there where he's waving with his left hand, but like shaking someone else's hand with his right behind his back, is that they put into the Constitution, whenever they ratified it, the Supremacy Clause, which says that no state shall make a law which, overrides or overrules something that the federal government does. So it's like, how could you possibly, on one hand, believe in something like the Supremacy Clause, while on the other hand, say in Federalist 17, that the states are more of a threat to the national government than vice versa? Like that it doesn't even track. It doesn't compute.
It just seems offensive.
It seems offensive,
I don't mean
right?
to be whatever we call the lefties, snowflakes.
Assholes.
I'm not being a snowflake right now, but I am offended. Okay,
Well,
now there's a million.
Disappointed is another word, right?
Thank you, Connor. But I just think he's being extra rude with how he speaks, and that's why I'm like, yeah, I'm kind of offended.
I'm over you, Hamilton. That's why we have
it's
a
like,
Madison
you really
bust
want
and
me
not
to
a
start
Hamilton bust.
identifying as anti-federalist,
Right,
don't you?
right.
There's so many issues where we can look for examples of how this is just not true. One of them that came to mind, because you and I, you're from Texas, I've lived in Texas, I have a house in Texas, is just the border situation that's going on. The federal government, the federal politicians and federal bureaucrats are committing dereliction of duty. And the states are trying their damnedest to fight back and to create their own border wall, to do their own security at the border, to send the National Guard, whatever they could possibly do. Florida's even trying to help at the state level, help Texas, protect the Texas border at the southern border, when our federal government should be doing it. And it's the federal government that's then suing them, and then we have to sue back, and then there's this whole system of the courts where we're trying to fight it out. But why would the federal government step in something like this when it's so against the average American people? And it's a situation where the states are trying to do the work of the federal government, and the federal government is stopping them. It's the exact opposite of what Hamilton said. I can't imagine it being the other way around.
No, me neither. And the states already are like under-equipped to do the work of the federal government, obviously, just based on tax revenue and preparedness and, general military posture. Like, one of the things that we should leave to the federal government is war, right? But the fact of the matter is that if you live in a southern state, we are under a invasion right now, right? 2 million illegal aliens flowed through our southern border last year, totally unchecked for all intents and purposes, right? And any time that there was an attempt to stop it, which many of those attempts came too late from the states, from Texas and from Arizona and all of these border states. New Mexico hasn't done anything. California hasn't done anything, obviously. They came way too late. But any time an attempt was made to stop it, there was this overly burdensome, pushback from the Biden regime, or the President Joe Biden's administration, I guess, for our purposes here. And what was actually kind of disappointing to me is that conservative governors, right-leaning leaders in these states, they really didn't have the chutzpah to take this head on immediately. I don't know if you remember this, but we were really frustrated about it on the Charlie Kirk show, when there was this coalition of governors, if they really want to call themselves that, they should be ashamed to sometimes, who thought they were doing something so big. They thought they were so cool. They went on Fox, or they went on a news station, and they said, well, we just got done penning a letter to the Biden administration telling him that he's not doing enough to secure the border, and we're demanding that he meet with us. And I'm like, what? Like, a letter? That's how you're going to stop the border invasion? That's what you're going to do? Why don't you send the National Guard to the border? Why don't you deploy troops? Why don't you do what Ron DeSantis eventually did, Governor Ron DeSantis eventually did, and arrest these people for trespassing, right? Because you can do that. That's within your rights. No, they sent a letter. It wasn't until people like us spoke up, people in the grassroots spoke up, people like Charlie Show spoke up, people like Tucker Carlson spoke up and said, what the hell are you doing down there? Grow some intestinal fortitude and secure your dang border, right? Then they finally did it because they're like, oh, crap, we're getting embarrassed on national TV. So anyway, the moral of the story, the reason why I say that is it's this long-standing agreement that we've had between the states and the federal government that conservatives have gotten confused because we are the party of law and order. We don't want to go against what the Constitution says. We generally speaking don't, right? Yeah. So we've always said, well, it's a federal issue and we can't break the law. Well, the left does it all the time, so why don't you do it sometimes? A little bit, right? Just a little bit. Just dip your toe in the water of disobeying the Constitution and secure your damn state because it's for the moral good.
And that's what I wonder, if this is true dereliction of duty and that's the kind of verbiage we're hearing these days, then when is it right for the states to step up? Because if the federal government is not serving the basic needs of its citizens, its taxpayers,
which it's not,
then is it a violation of the Constitution for the state to step up and say, okay, then I'm going to do it? And it's just so convoluted, but it's really, I hope you guys understand, everybody listening, it is so strange to hear the way he speaks in this paper. It just totally threw me off. We could go through this episode and just talk about all the different times the federal government has caused problems. And I try to wonder, and I tried to reason. Sometimes you hear like Jen Psaki, for example. Did you see the recent video of her where she did some Skype Zoom interview, and she sounded like Hamilton in this paper, the way she was just so snooty.
Right.
And I'm not saying that because she's a woman. I'm saying she sounded just as snooty as the man, Alexander Hamilton. Yeah, people always accuse me of that. I'm a woman, so I feel like I can call another woman snooty.
Well,
sometimes.
I'm a man, and I think I can call a woman snooty too, because
it's like
sometimes
with AOC.
y'all are. Yeah,
it's
exactly.
Like, no, I don't want to date you, AOC. I am a 25-year-old young, straight, single woman, and I think you're an idiot half the time. And then I'm not going to continue that one.
Okay.
So we're just going to stop. I'll be nice. So Jen Psaki is doing this interview, and she was like, for example, I have 4 screens on my room wall right now. There's MSNBC, CNN, CNBC, and then Fox. All the good ones, they're covering important issues. They're talking about what's going on in the courts and doing blah, blah, blah. But then Fox is talking about what? The dangers of soft on crime policies. What does that even mean? You know, like, and like, I don't know, because people keep getting killed and a police officer was just shot in New York City. And there's massive problems. So then she's going on, and I'm listening to this woman talk, and she's saying, well, and then you have states like Florida just completely disregarding the people's will and the federal government. And I'm like, maybe that's what Hamilton was talking about, of this idea that the people in D.C. think that they know what's best for a state, when in reality, Florida's the good guy, Florida's in the right, the federal government is in the wrong in this situation, and Florida is standing up. Maybe the tyrants are saying, you, the state, you are oppressing us, you are denying our authority, and you're hurting the people. You know how it's a language game. And so maybe it's not the same as what Jen Psaki is saying about Florida and what Alexander Hamilton is saying about states oppressing and putting their power over the federal government. But I see this kind of wordplay going on where you accuse your enemy of what you are doing yourself. And that's what Jen Psaki is saying to us.
It's typical gaslighting. It's what Saul Alinsky wrote about in 13 Rules for Radicals about how to defeat your enemy totally, right? That book, by the way, was dedicated to Lucifer. If you open it up, it was dedicated to Lucifer, who is Satan.
I hope everybody needs to read that
13
book,
Rules for Radicals. It's incredible. You should all read it. It's
Very
what Hillary Clinton wrote her senior thesis on at Wellesley, by the way.
No, it's so also it trains community organizers. That was the concept. If you've heard AOC call herself a community organizer, it's because the radical left considers themselves, when they don't really have any other jobs other than like being a political personality and wanting to run for office in the future, while you're causing the chaos in your community and getting your name recognition, you call yourself a community organizer. Hillary Clinton considered herself an Alinskyite, which is a student of Saul Alinsky. Barack Obama called himself a community organizer.
That's
AOC
the book that
did
built
too.
Barack Obama.
When you read that book, it makes total sense. And one of the biggest lessons, I wonder what your favorite lesson is. One of the rules is to create a movement on the left that can get so infuriated about any issue. If you pick an issue and say it's abortion, your people are going to care about that for maybe 2 to 3 years, and they're going to be super pro-choice, and they're going to advocate for it all the time, and they're going to be women's rights advocates and stuff. But after a few years, you start to lose momentum, and then your movement kind of dies out. You can't bring any more money in. You don't get as much media attention. You lose momentum. And so Saul Alinsky says, make a population in your movement of people that can get pissed about anything. So that's why the left has successfully created that movement. That's why one week they're saying that everybody that won't say say the proper preferred pronouns of the trans people are transphobic, and that's the biggest problem. The next week they're saying we're going to die of climate change in 10 years. The next week we're talking about white supremacy, and then the next week we're worried about Joe Rogan on Spotify, and it feels like end of the world, doomsday every single time with this issue. It's because it keeps momentum in their movement. Connor, what's your favorite?
Every day that ends with a Y is Armageddon.
Exhausting to deal with.
So exhausting, and people get tired of it. And one of the rules, actually, that rule number 7, which is one I think that the left is ignoring right now, which is really interesting. It is a tactic that drags on too long becomes a drag. So what are we seeing right now? We're seeing people who are on the left get really fed up with all this COVID stuff, and they're like, I'm sick and tired of wearing a mask. And so the regime in Washington, D.C., and then we'll get back to the Federalist Papers here in just one moment, I promise. The regime in Washington, D.C. is saying, crap, we're losing our grip on them. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? I can just imagine Biden and Kamala and all these people and Psaki and Ron Klain. And they're sitting there, vaccinate the 6-month-old. And you give a shot to a toddler. I'm like, how is that going to get people to buy in? And then Biden is like, no, we have to invade Russia. And Psaki's like, well, sir, it's the dead of winter. We probably shouldn't do that if history's in. No, we have to invade Russia. So anyway, so they're just like, they're diverting course again. And if the domestic war on COVID is being lost by the regime, then they're going to get us into a ground war with Russia in the dead of winter. And I got to tell you, if Napoleon, who is one of the world's greatest, for all of his faults, military minds, couldn't beat Russia in the dead of winter, then I don't think that Joe Biden could. I mean, reminder, this is the same guy who couldn't beat a bunch of goat herders in Afghanistan. I mean, we let a 20-year war end in 24 hours because we just said, oopsie daisies. Yeah. The goat herders are, excuse me, sorry, buddy.
We're going to need to bleep that one.
Sorry. Anyway, to go back to your original point before we fall too deep down any other rabbit hole, I think that what Psaki is so offended by in that moment that you talked about was that they truly believe that they have an 81 million vote mandate, right? They really think, and I'm not getting into the legitimacy of the election, that's not what the show's about, right? But they actually believe that they are the most popularly elected president in the history of the United States. Maybe it's the case. Who knows? So they're sitting here thinking, well, how dare anyone oppose us? We are exactly what the people want, right? Yeah. They're saying that the constitutional system worked. It worked the way that it was supposed to. And now we should have the ability to govern the way that we see fit because that's what the people decided in November. Well, in reality, we have a federalist system, right? And that's beautiful. And so any opposition to their regime is an affront to their power. And the way that they play it is it's an affront to the people of the United States. It's a threat. We talked about this before. It's a threat to democracy, right? That's why you see everything as a threat to democracy, because they actually feel like they were genuinely democratically elected by more people than ever before. So if you oppose them at all, you are an enemy of democracy. It's so sick and twisted and sinister and evil, and we say that all the time. But the point cannot be belabored enough. That our federalist system works because we can actually stand up for, our communities that we know best. Hamilton says it in here. He even says it in here, right? He says that the states and the localities and the councils and the towns are the most apt and fit to govern the people of those states and localities and councils and towns, right?
Yeah.
So that's what DeSantis is doing.
That's what I don't get about it too. It totally conflicts what he's saying. He's saying the states and the local governments are going to be the best to handle all the other problems, so the federal government's not going to want to step in anyways. Yeah. Not only does it not serve the people in the federal government in any selfish passions that they may have, but the localities and the states are better to do it anyways. So then what the heck?
Oh, and can I tell you, I think that was probably true, though, just so we're clear. That was probably, we do have to recognize, though, and just to give Hamilton a little bit of slack, right? Okay. We do have to recognize.
You're right. I'm being a little tough.
I know, but it's easy to be tough because we're living through something right now that's unprecedented, right? Yeah. And I'm so tired of saying that things are unprecedented because it's like, everything is unprecedented. Today is day 688 of 15 days to slow the spread. By the time this airs, we're going to be on day 700 something, right? It's insane. That's unprecedented. Anyway, sorry, I'm fired up again.
I know.
So this was probably true up until 1861. Are you okay?
Sorry, my hands hurt.
Your hands hurt?
Keep going.
This was probably true up until 1861, that the federal government really didn't give a damn about states' rights. Up until the point where states decided that they wanted to start leaving the union, right? And then they were like, maybe we should care a little bit more. And that's then when you see Lincoln suspending habeas corpus. And that's when you see things like the 14th Amendment come into play after the war is over, and then the 13th, et cetera, 15th, whatever. And there is then an interesting argument to be made that I'm not necessarily saying that I subscribe to, or that the show subscribes to, or that Turning Point subscribes to, but that started this long slide into totalitarianism, where under the threat, and we're seeing this play out today too, obviously on a smaller scale, under the threat of domestic insurrection like we saw in the Civil War, the federal government is empowered to do whatever they like, whatever they want, right? And so if they can say, well, if you don't enact this policy on a national federal level, then it's going to lead to another civil war, right?
Yeah.
That, in some ways, was the justification for the Civil Rights Act. The Civil Rights Act is obviously generally a good thing, right?
Yeah.
But there is literature out there that says whenever we decided to pass the Civil Rights Act in the mid 1960s, it opened the floodgates for anything to become a federal issue, right? Because if you can legislate at every minute level, the decisions of individual businesses and individual families and individual all these things, right? If you can legislate that, then you can legislate anything. And it has to create this open and tolerant, accepting society for all kinds of reckless behavior. So that's how we end up with drag queen story hours. That's how we end up with transgenderism running rampant. That's how we end up with somehow the conservative governor saying that he's okay with 4-year-olds chopping their genitals off,
Who
right?
said that?
Governor Asa Hutchinson of Arkansas, who's one of the most unimpressive people I've ever seen in my life. Arkansas creates really bad governors. I don't know if you noticed that.
We should have him invited to Freedom Papers, and we'll ask him to explain his stances.
Well, he's a
He probably
scumbag
won't
and a
come on
coward.
now.
He wouldn't do that. But anyway,
They're gonna reply to our invite with that clip of you.
I hope that they do. He was one of the,
for these reasons.
He was one of the
we'll
ones
be
who
ready.
signed on to that really strong letter to President Biden. It was him and Governor Ducey, God love him.
Oh, geez.
So,
Well,
anyway.
you know what, Connor? I think we could rant about this one for quite some time. I hope you guys understand how weird this paper is. So you've really got to read it for yourself to just understand and get Hamilton's tone in this and go, what the heck is he thinking? At the same time, I understand that you got to put yourself back in the situation of this paper is technically about Articles of Confederation and how it wasn't working. At the time, yes, it was a problem because the federal government was very weak. Hamilton was saying there really isn't anything bringing us together in some sort of federal government. You just have these powerful sovereign states that are their own little countries basically brought together in a league. And yes, they would technically overpower the federal government or league power that is currently in formation under the Articles of Confederation. And so that's why I get it. I see in that one tiny glimpse. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But that taking a short-term solution or something like that, or keeping your eyes focused on only one issue, very tunnel-visioned, that's never going to work out, and I think that's what's happening here.
Yeah.
That being said, Connor, the other big thing, I got that lesson from this paper, and then another lesson, and I want to talk to you about it, because it is like our bread and butter. I read it, and I was like, oh boy, I hope Connor can join. Okay, Publius says, it is a known fact in human nature that its affections are commonly weak in proportion to the distance or diffusiveness of the object. Upon the same principle that a man is more attached to his family than to his neighborhood than to the community at large, the people of each state would be apt to feel a stronger bias towards their local governments than towards the government of the Union, unless the force of that principle should be destroyed by a much better administration of the latter. The strong propensity of the human heart would find powerful auxiliaries in the objects of state regulation. Now, here's what I took out of this, Connor. How far have we come from that concept? And I think our country is so much in disarray right now because we are building a collective mindset. Now, this is before communism came on the rise, people, but a century or so after, in the 1800s and then into the 1900s with the rise of communism and this idea that the collective is more powerful and important and deserving of your love and attention and efforts than your children and your family unit and your community and yourself as an individual, that all rose up 100, 200 years after this was written, and it's totally transformed society. That is the biggest threat, or one of the biggest threats, to a society that you can experience. The creation of a collective mindset where then the small few elites at the top control the collective by saying, we'll be empowering you. by controlling everything for you and giving you everything. The idea of a collective mindset. That's why our conservative movement now is focusing so much on protecting and reestablishing a strong family unit. Individuals bettering themselves morally, spiritually, physically, because we got some problems there, and mentally, because stronger, better people will create stronger, better families that will lead to stronger communities and stronger states. We are advocating for that now because we've gotten so far away from this paragraph.
Mm-hmm. And it's actually very, very fascinating that, and I think it was intentional, I'll say this, I think it was actually really intentional for the leaders of the federal government at the very top to kind of delegitimize the local leaders and to diminish the importance of being involved at a local level, because it really wasn't until recently that we started to see people on the right start to say, hey, get involved with your local elections, get involved with your school boards. Everything, like all the way down to the most local of elections, matters really, really a lot more than voting for president, right? And that's kind of a new thing. And I'm young, and maybe it was something before, but I consider myself a general student of history, and I haven't seen something like that before. We're living through something that I like to call the rise of the citizen. We like to call it that on the show, right? And what that means is that we're seeing citizens rise up and get involved at the most local levels, because they're saying we have very little power to immediately take back the White House right now, or to take back the things that are happening in D.C. against our will. But by God, we can take back our school boards, we can take back our local communities, we can take back our homeowners associations, because think about it. From the smallest thing like a homeowners association, they can tell you that you can't fly an American flag.
Mm-hmm.
What does that do? That leads to this, A, it's anti-American, obviously. B, it doesn't respect property rights, which is a big deal here, right? So with the destruction of property rights, that leads to this entire idea that none of the local stuff really matters, because it's like, well, we don't really, what do I have to be invested in? I live in a one-bedroom apartment or a studio or something, and I really don't care. I don't have a neighborhood. I have someone down the hall who yells at me, What's the point? So anyway, yeah, you're totally right. You're absolutely spot on. That conservatives have to start really getting involved in empowering the citizen and empowering them to be, yes, healthy, yes, happy, yes, patriotic, and gritty and tough and willing to actually fight for the things that matters, fight for the things that matter. And at the end of the day, we realize that that's not a seat in Congress. That's not what they decide to do in D.C. in the halls of, the Department of Labor, whatever the hell that is. It's what's happening in my kid's school.
Yeah.
And it's what's happening in my, not to sound mushy or gushy or anything like that. It's what's happening in the rumblings of my heart and my mind that make me say, well, yeah, I do give a damn about this country because it's beautiful and it matters and it's permanent and it's something worth fighting for. So that's why we're working on those things, the conservative movement is. We used to rail against this idea of collectivism, and as we should, right? But there is something to be said about a positive collective mindset that values things that are good and true and proper and permanent. Mm-hmm. And that's not what the collectivists of the left want. They want you to just value the totality of will of the federal system and what the few people on the top care about. And that's
such a good
so
point.
far away from what we want.
Well, because something that's interesting, so I talk a lot about education reform and what we can do, because I think this idea of abandoning and not paying attention or not caring about local elections or local school boards, local meetings, our city councils, our state governments even, we have overlooked them for so long that it's just become the norm. And we see whoever's president as like, oh, they're our supreme leader.
Our savior.
And it matters who's in Congress and who's not and all this stuff. We don't even care about state and local anymore. We don't even know. We probably don't even show up for the election day or anything like that. Right. And so we need to get back into that mindset. Totally. I think we are. But when it comes to things like education, conservatives are now saying, and I say this a lot, it doesn't look like just changing curriculum in public schools. Yes, we have to do that, but we also have to make sure that it's easy and accessible to send your kid to a different option, a charter school, a private school, or homeschool.
School choice matters a lot.
The left is making it very hard to start a charter school, to maintain a charter school, to send your kid to homeschool, to start a homeschool, start a pod. They're making it as hard as possible with regulation and bureaucracy and all these things.
And just tell me if I'm wrong, but that doesn't sound like it's commerce, finance, negotiations, or war, one of the four things that Hamilton laid out, right?
God,
does it?
No.
Okay.
And so the approach to fixing something like education is multifaceted. Sure. But when we talk, I also bring up this idea, it's the conservative and American concept of this collective that we have. And I would say it's more so community focused.
Yeah, community
We
is a
care
beautiful word
about
for it.
the generational impacts that our actions today are going to have on the future of the country. We want to build tradition and culture and community, and those things matter. That's the collective that we should be caring about. The left says, no, we should have government provided everything because the collective as a whole is more important than everything. So I found it funny. Did you see the video of the liberal or leftist politician that did the video? And she's like, we need to start thinking of kids as controlled and owned by the community, not by parents.
No, that's terrifying.
Oh my God, it went viral because it sounds scary, because when they consider kids
Was that one of those Tic Tacs?
owned by community, it was like maybe a campaign video or something. I don't really know.
Dear God.
But it was this video promoting her platform and her group's platform, saying we can't think of kids anymore just controlled by parents and owned by parents. They're owned by the community. So when they say that, that's scary, because they think that they have a right to make decisions like who should vaccinate a 3-year-old child, and that they can force that on us. But when we look at this, we say we don't have rights to your child. We shouldn't be making decisions for your child. But I care enough about you, Connor, that I want your family to flourish too. And I want your children to have great access to everything as well, and opportunity. We care, and we're compassionate, and we care about the people in our community and our neighborhood. And that's why we have that community mindset versus the evil collectivist mindset of the radical left, which is about government taking over and forcing us to do things for the greater good of the collective.
Yeah, the greater good. The government doesn't care about the greater good of the collective. Obviously, they don't. Right? If they did, then they wouldn't have locked us in our homes. This is going to air in a few weeks, but there was a study that just came out today that said that lockdowns actually had, quite literally, this is a government study, government data, zero effect on mitigating the spread of COVID. Lockdowns, keeping people locked inside their homes. But what those lockdowns did have an effect on was depression, loneliness, suicide rates, education. There was something that came out today as well, and a teacher in Baltimore, and we've always known that the Baltimore public schools are really bad, right?
Yeah.
Teacher in Baltimore came out, and she did it anonymously, like she's a whistleblower, and she said that there are 77% of kids at Baltimore's largest high schools, at Baltimore's largest high school, who are reading at a kindergarten level. 77% of kids in high school. It's not just that they're not reading at grade level, folks. It's that they're reading at the level of a kindergartner.
That's insane.
We have failed our kids. Why have we failed our kids? Because we've given up on this idea that they matter, that parents have just handed them over to the state and said, here, you take them.
Yeah.
Right? And the state has failed. And how could we ever sit back again and say, no, these kids are ours.
Yeah.
You're not touching them. You're not putting a shot in them. You're not going to teach them your woke, trans, queer, black theory curriculum. No, we're taking our kids to a better school, and you better let us or else. And we're going to teach them that America is good, that Christ is real, that the Constitution matters, and that family matters. Damn it.
That's why it's like, okay, so Hamilton says some crazy stuff in this paper,
Yeah.
but I loved this paragraph from him because it's so true. At the time, it used to be an American concept to care about yourself as an individual, your children, your family unit, then your community, and then that surrounding greater community, which was your state. And then you consider the federal government's role in your life. And so I agree with him completely. The problem is we've just abandoned that principle.
Of course we
It's
have.
almost like he took for granted that would be a continued value in America.
And it would have been a continued value in America. An object in motion stays in motion, right? That's one of Newton's laws. It's a fact of nature. Well, there had to be something that stopped this construct of our nation from continuing on the path that it was, that the founders set it on. And it was government interference outside of commerce, finance, negotiation, and war. It was when the government decided they want to get involved in families in the 60s, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, it became easier to get a divorce. It became easier to rent a home than it was to buy a home. It became more profitable to be a family with a single mother as opposed to two parents, right? It became a lot easier to live a life of licentiousness and vice than it was to live a life of virtue and goodness. And a community that is not bound by common moral principles is going to fall apart. And we see that in our inner cities. We see that in Baltimore with these schools. We see it everywhere. There's a really good book that I want to recommend to everybody on the show, and it's not the Federalist Papers. It's actually called The Quest for Community by Robert Nisbet. It's an old book. It's from the 50s. And then there's kind of an updated play off of it. It's called Bowling Alone, and I can't remember the author, but I'll get it for you. And that one was published in the early 2000s. But it talks about how as we abandon community and as we abandon these like small organizations and like these kind of like this idea that knowing your neighbor matters and being involved with your school matters and like things like that, PTA, etc. as we abandon those things, America got less prosperous, it got less free, it got more depressing, and then suicide rates go up, and then like the more we get divorced, the dumber our kids are, and like all of these things. It's such an incredible read. It's incredibly depressing. But like sometimes you have to like get a little bit of a wake up call to be like, crap, we got to get back to that.
Well, I'm gonna get that book. Thank you.
You should. You totally should. It's incredible. Actually, you can borrow my copy if you want. It's like thoroughly. It looks.
I
like
actually
yours.
love to collect. That's the thing. Like,
Yeah,
I
do too.
might borrow it just to read it quick, but I love collecting.
I do too.
Did I tell you how I got my Constitution stolen from me?
Did you really? By who?
Remember? So if anybody listened to the last episode with Connor, I told you about my homeless problem.
Yeah.
So they get into the apartment complex, and this is another situation of like when we don't care about local rules, then we have our apartments broken into, and it turns out it was local ordinances or state ordinances in Arizona where fair housing laws, it makes it hard to hold homeless people accountable when they're breaking rules. So we have a situation where we're in a gated apartment complex, but the homeless people will wait for the gates to open when cars come in, they get in, and they try to find open apartments.
Fired up again.
And so they jiggle our keys and see if our doors are open, and that happened recently with Alex and I where they just walked right in our front door. It was very scary. But what they also do is steal all the packages at the front door. And so Alex knows this and she makes fun of me. My roommate actually makes me open my packages in front of her so that she can laugh at me. And like half the time it's like seeds or like microgreen pads or survival equipment and stuff, like a hatchet. And she's just like, what? And then like a Native American remedy for smallpox. Like
what?
Like, so that's why she makes me open them in front of her. Most recently, I'm really obsessed with getting hard copies of books because I think if you don't know something and you have to Google it to know it, then you don't know it.
That's correct.
You cannot rely on having the internet for you always. And so I have a ton of encyclopedias. I have an encyclopedia of country living, which is like everything you need to homestead. I have all these recipe books, and I have every classic book. I have a budget every week of how much I invest into buying things. So most recently, my expense of the week for building out my homestead library was hard covers of our founding documents, and I think I got Common Sense and Democracy in America. And so I do a little bit every week to slowly grow. Some MFer, somebody. So I get a picture from the delivery people every time it's delivered. So it's like, your package has been delivered, it's at your front door. And then of course I see the picture, I'm like, great, by the time I get home, it's been stolen. So it's just so frustrating. But imagine the people that like thought they were going to steal something really valuable, and instead it's
I hope they read it.
It's like a hardcover
read.
copy of the U.S. Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, Common Sense, and Democracy in America. And they probably opened it and said, "Oh man, this is
They'll probably
lousy."
use it as
When in
toilet
reality,
paper.
it's like a super expensive version, and it's the most valuable set of documents you could ever have.
Yeah.
And so to me, I was like, this is one of the most important purchases I've made so far. I need it on my homestead. They steal it. Of course, they have no care for how important those documents are. They probably threw them right out. And it just seemed like a perfect imagery and story of the problem we're in today, where they probably thought that was like the most invaluable
Well, you know what?
box of products.
They're the most unvaluable person in our society, and they can go screw themselves.
Thank you,
And
Connor.
of course, excuse me, sorry, that was probably not very compassionate of me, but I don't care. We got to get tough, and the time for compassion has passed.
Oh, well.
Excuse me.
But I hope that was a good episode for you guys. The two lessons there were, yes, Hamilton is super confusing and I think a little too naive with his idea that it's not going to be a very good incentive for federal power to encroach on the people and to take over control of things that they aren't given, the four main core topics. Obviously, that's not the case anymore. And second, his belief that because America cared about the individual, the family unit, and community first, they would not allow the federal government to get this much power. How the tides have turned.
How the tides have turned.
Tides have shifted? Tables have
Oh,
turned?
how the turntables.
Wasn't that an office?
I don't know. Can I
An
give a
office
Can I
quote?
give a really quick closing thought here?
Yes,
just because it
please.
literally just hit me looking down at my paper.
Hit
So
us
on
with
this
it.
on this paper, I have commerce, finance, negotiation, and war written down. The four things that he said he cared about, that the federal government was supposed to care about.
Mhm.
And I just want to go through them really quickly and
Please do.
pose the question: Are they even doing that well? Because I think we know the answer here, right? But let's start at the bottom.
That's a good idea.
Let's start at the bottom. War. Well, we're about to go to war with Russia in the dead of winter, and like I said before, Napoleon tells you that's a bad idea, amongst other people. We couldn't even evacuate our troops or our citizens from Afghanistan without losing 13 soldiers. We let goat herders take over the country. We haven't won a war since 1945, right? So yeah, we're not even doing war very well. We're more worried about being woke than we are at winning wars. So that's not going well. That's an X. Hamilton. Negotiation, how about that? Well, we were good at it for 4 years, but then it seems like we stopped. I wonder why, because we're now weak. So negotiation, are we doing well there? No, not at all. We're not getting good trade deals anymore. Russia has a pipeline, but America doesn't. We're suffering at every turn, and our border is wide open. We can't even cut a deal with the southern or the Central American states to actually take care of the issue. So even though Kamala Harris is on it, I don't know.
Yeah.
Finance, we just hit $30 trillion in debt.
Ooh.
No, we're not doing well with that. And then commerce. Go to a grocery store. Tell me how the shelves are stocked. Tell me if we're doing well at commerce.
Connor
Let me know,
Clegg.
okay.
Coming in hard at the end.
So until we can do that, then I don't want to hear a damn thing about our kids' education or our lives or anything like that.
Let's abolish the Fed. And
Hell
by that
yeah.
I mean everything in it. All right, you guys, thanks for watching Freedom Papers. Freedom Papers. We appreciate it. We'll see you next week. Thanks, Connor, for joining.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
The left is all talk. We know this is true. They say they stand for something, but it's actually the exact opposite because, duh, they're liars. So when they say they stand for women's rights, I laugh because it's just not true.
Yeah, right.
I hear a lot of conservatives say that they're not feminists, and I get it. And I hear leftists claim they're the end-all be-all for feminism. So I've got to ask, who are the real feminists, conservatives or leftists? And can she please stand up so we can settle this once and for all?
Stand up, Joe. Just stand up, Joe. Just stand up and go on.
On this special episode of Politics, we're going to decide who is actually pro-woman. And trust me, the result will shock you. I'm Alex Clark, and this is your quick politic on feminism. If you pay any attention to social media, then you're likely up to speed with the word on the street. Apparently, women in the West are being oppressed at record rates. Women's suffrage too. It's like women's equality never happened.
Is your husband home?
No,
Is there a man here I can talk to?
not right now.
I see. Is there anybody in this house that can vote?
I've been voting all my life. Well, I mean, since I was old enough.
This is not against the law?
No, it is not.
So let's do a little recap to see how far we've come, shall we? The first wave took place from around the 1830s to the early 1900s. Now, their cause was legit. Women literally could not vote, so women's suffrage was a major focus at the time.
Women, we have spent decades fighting for our right to vote. So when you go to those booths and cast your ballot, remember, Warren G. Harding is way the cutest!
See, this is the sort of rah-rah feminism I can get behind. The right to actually vote, not the hate our men, dye our hair blue, abort the babies kind.
Mostly I feel feminine or non-binary. Today I'm feeling really femme.
Then in the 1960s came the second wave. This time, women had more rights than they did when the first wave began, except feminists were fighting for reproductive rights, like abortion, rights in the workplace, and in the family. Think Mad Men, Burn Your Bra, March Against Vietnam, all the cliche feminine stuff that comes to mind.
I'm not stupid.
That wave lasted like 2 decades, and the movement actually had ties to other movements like the gay and lesbian, black civil rights, Chicano rights, and the Asian America civil rights movements, to name a few. It's safe to say that the advocacy at the time was a hodgepodge, so basically as messy and confusing as it is now.
Mr. Krabs, I am so confused.
Then, in the 90s through the early 2000s, there was a new wave described by the progressive women leadership as a movement that focused on the micro-politics of gender equality. I'm sorry, micro-politics? What does that even mean when it comes to feminism?
Listen, bud. Hey, this is the 90s.
women are treated equal.
I'll admit it, the feminist movement has some big achievements to brag about, right? In America, women have achieved freedom, equal rights, and have made it into the workplace. I mean, I'm here, right?
Dang, girl smurfs mean business.
But wait, it didn't stop there. Today, the feminism gods have given us hashtagable movements like Me Too and Time's Up. Now, I'm not here to deny that some women have faced both difficulties in the workplace and flat-out injustices in life. The world is filled with bad people who do very bad things. But I find it so ironic that these movements come out of places that, I don't know, are guilty of the things that blame society for. Looking at you, Hollywood.
Sad.
The way I see feminist outrage today, it's like a vintage grievance. Not cute, not in style, and out of date.
You're tacky and I hate you.
So why bring up this brief little history tour? Because while early feminists fought for equal rights, today's feminists are fighting to remove the uniqueness of being a woman and trying to make them so equal that you can't even differentiate them from the men.
I don't know your gender. I don't know Candace's. I don't know mine.
You don't know my gender?
I don't.
Do I look like a woman?
I don't know what a woman looks like.
So, reason one why the left is actually not pro-woman, they deny the basic biology of women.
Yeah, Mr. White. Yes, science.
Let's look at one example. Periods. Women have periods. We don't always wish we did, but we do. And it's the left that claims men can have periods too.
I read somewhere that their periods attract bears. The bears can smell the menstruation.
According to publications like 17 magazine, men can menstruate. Non-binary folks can menstruate. Intersex people can menstruate. Agender people can menstruate. The fact that an organ in your body has the ability to shed its lining every once in a while does not determine who you are as a person or how the world should recognize you.
It's amazing. You are 100% wrong.
The popular brand Always even removed the Venus symbol from its products in the name of inclusion, suggesting, once again, that not just women have periods.
I need to correct you on that point.
The insanity doesn't stop with Aunt Flo. Men, or men who wish to identify as women, should also be made to feel included in the pregnancy experience, according to the left. Recently, a Harvard professor of evolutionary biology was blasted by her department's diversity director because she refused to use the woke term pregnant people. Her woke peers think that words such as male and female are dangerous.
By now you should know your bitch is pregnant.
If it's dangerous to specify male from female, and if male and female are merely social constructs, shouldn't we completely disregard the first wave of feminism and all those that fought for equal rights for women and what they accomplished? I mean, they only fought for the rights of biological women. Sounds pretty dangerous and exclusive of them.
They're not gonna let you in at the country club at that.
I wonder what the OG feminists would have thought of modern leftist feminists hell-bent on including men in bodily female functions like, you know, breastfeeding. I'm sorry, I mean chest feeding. No, wait, body feeding. We're literally eliminating language pertaining to inherently female traits.
You know that's breast milk.
So technically, someone's chest cannot feed a child. Only the breast produces milk, which means that a baby can only be fed by a breast, not a chest, okay? And don't even get me started with the image that body feeding leaves in my mind.
Everybody's been real nice.
Well, that's because you have big jugs.
In all seriousness, though, leftists are eliminating female-centered words, denying the unique biological functions of women, and acting like this is all inclusive. How is it inclusive when you don't let biological women acknowledge that their own bodies are different from men?
I am very cute, I am very alone, and I'm very protective of my body.
Reason two why the left is not pro-woman, they want to deny them the ability to defend themselves. It is no secret that the left wants to ban all things guns, but there is a reason conservatives call firearms the great equalizer. It doesn't matter if you're buff, a noodle, or a worm like me. Give a girl a firearm and we can keep ourselves and our families safe just like everyone else.
Shut up and keep your hands to yourself or I'll cut your little pecker.
But the left doesn't want that. They preach that women should be powerful and stand up for ourselves, but they take away the thing that actually allows us to do that.
I'll kill you. I'll kill you.
Women owning firearms gives us a strong defense in attacks, home invasions, and more. Giving someone a gun levels the playing field to people bigger than us. Do these leftists want women to stay in danger? Because they should be terrified to find that female gun ownership has risen 40% just this year. While the left tries to force victimization on you, know that conservatives support your right to defend and protect yourself like everybody else.
I won't hesitate.
Reason three why the left is not pro-woman, they're not pro-life. Sorry, not sorry, but feminism entails standing up for the rights of all women, born and unborn. Abortion not only ends the life of an unborn baby, it can also harm the women who have had the procedure. I'm not saying that pregnancy is the only defining trait women have, but it is perhaps the most significant difference we have compared to men. And rather than acknowledging the beauty of pregnancy, the left treats it as if it's something optional that can just be thrown away, or a disease. And not only that, the rhetoric the left uses around abortion is misleading. They call it healthcare, which is weird because I was under the impression that true healthcare involves a doctor doing their absolute best to save their patients. In pregnancy, there are two separate patients. Killing one on purpose isn't healthcare.
Let's go make a killing.
Abortion is a violent act committed against the unborn, but it is also an act committed against women's bodies. It doesn't get any more anti-woman than that.
Some of you may die, but it's a sacrifice I am willing to make.
Conservatives believe in preservation, as in preserving what makes women great. That is feminism. To acknowledge the distinctions in biological functions in today's crazy times is to preserve science. And it ultimately means to respect the general differences that make women so great. It's not that women are better than men, and it's not that women should root their identity in one cinnamon roll cut way. But it also shouldn't be controversial to publicly say, yeah, women can get their period, have babies, and maybe even breastfeed. Sorry, men, but you've got to sit these experiences out. And if other women disagree with us on this, we don't wish to silence you.
I don't know why Dion's going out with a high school boy. They're like dogs. You have to clean them and feed them, and they're just like these nervous creatures that jump and slobber all over you.
Preserving womanhood doesn't just stop there. To defend women is to defend their right to self-defense, as in the Second Amendment. To defend women also means to defend those who cannot do so for themselves. The most vulnerable females we can all defend are those in the womb whose lives have the ability to change our world.
I'm a big tough girl. I tie my own sandals and everything.
So maybe some of you conservatives don't identify as feminists because the left has ruined the word and the original intent of the movement over all these decades. But never let any leftist make you feel like you're not the most pro-woman person in the room.
That's a woman who knows how to do her job. She's keeping it real.
Hit the heart if you liked what I had to say today. Tag somebody in the comments that you think needs to hear this. Share it to your stories. Make sure you hit that save button. And we'll see you tomorrow at 4 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Pacific. It's pop culture without the propaganda every single day. I'm Alex Clark, and this is Politics.